You're saying you want me to play music again? Jared?
Do you want to or no?
I can if you want me to.
Can you play music for like 5 more minutes?
Sure.
Like play like or play music for however long you want, but between 5 minutes and or longer. That's incredible.
What? Force their policy?
No, fuck them, bro. Like, fuck you.
There's fucking copyright. It sucks. It fucking sucks that we can't just fucking make the show we want to make.
I just want to mix stuff. And that was very relevant and stylish way to... That was a very relevant and stylish way to do it. Fucking assholes. Well, it's not like I had viewership in the first place, and I said
yes, you did.
Oh, I mean, I had maybe like I had like 5 people watching. I got 1 person that came back.
Oh, are we still streaming?
Yeah, we're streaming now. So we're still doing the show, guys, but I guess I got shut down because naughty, you're not allowed to use copyrighted content because fuck you, YouTube. Information doesn't belong to fucking anybody. God. We're gonna get started here in a couple minutes, guys. Just give me a minute to fucking recuperate. Oh, man. Fucking lost a viewer.
Where was I? Kind of interrupted my mix here.
Ruined the whole fucking vibe, man. Fuck YouTube. No choice but to go with YouTube too, because Twitch decided to lock me out all of a sudden while I was live streaming. So YouTube and Twitch cooperated is what I think. Twitch is just faking. They're gonna fucking go just the same way YouTube did. Alright guys, let's say about whenever Sam wants to stop playing, how about that? Let's get back on track. Welcome everyone to Mentally Illest Radio, where we have authoritative content. We introduce God to devil vibes through process dialogue. And today, we're going to be talking about natural law and free will, and continuing our presentation. Well, I'll be continuing my presentation from last time, and then also raising a controversy that I've discovered, or possibly a deeper understanding of natural law and the way that free will interacts with the law and how it works. So we'll be talking about causality a lot today. But first I wanted to just go over a few things. My stream got shut down. Oh, by the way, welcome everyone, including the YouTube mods, or the YouTube censor police or whatever, who shut down my stream because I was showing an episode of Kino's Journey, the new animated series, the first episode, which was against the rules. You're not allowed to mix things that have copyrighted material because there's this thing called intellectual property right laws and blah 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 blah. Go fuck yourselves. But anyway, if I ever get disconnected again, hopefully my Twitch channel will also fuck up, and I can just continue the stream on Twitch. And for that, you can reach my Twitch channel. It's called Mentally Illest Plays. But oh wait, this got underscores. It's Mentally Illest Radio. And there's also it's Mentally Illest Plays it's twitch.tv/Mentally Illest Plays is where you can find a little more uncensored than YouTube content. They'll just let me, they'll actually let me mix over there. So far, I don't have a lot of followers, but, people stream anime, I guess, on Twitch. So I guess it's acceptable on Twitch. But, with that out of the way, let me do a recap of last week. Last week we talked about, Paul Romero's video when he said necessary evil in the beastly system, programmed by the beastly system to be a certain way, and as a result he's making the argument that people would need a ruling class gang to terrorize people and assault them and kidnap them and torture them in jail and then drag them through court if they so much as disobey any kind of dictate by the ruling class gang. And that's them doing their job. And that's a necessary evil in the beastly system because of how fucked up people supposedly have been conditioned and programmed. So this all starts really with this belief in original sin, which is where we went over that people believe that either whether you're a Darwinian evolutionist or a Christian religionist who believes the same thing about whether it's the Adam and Eve story or whatever story about how mankind is inherently sinful. Right, and that we have to be saved by a higher power in order, that we're unable to govern ourselves without a higher power. And the same thing with the Darwinian evolutionists, or the social Darwinists, who, it's like the survival of the fittest applied to society and social dynamics, making the claim and argument that this is all normal and right, and this is the natural order of things, survival of the fittest. The people who fucking are the most mean and ruthless and cunning and manipulative, and they fucking get jobs in government and torture us, they're the ones that are rightfully set to rule over the less terrible and mean and cruel and fucked up and manipulative and, you know, wanting to fuck over anybody and extract wealth from them against, you know, like scam them against their will or threaten them and coerce them into feeling terrorized, that they have to, you know, having that kind of relationship. Claiming that this is all just the natural order of things. Like, oh, that's the way things are, and that's the way they've always been, and that's just the rightful order of nature. Or the religion side, how they'll say, you know, that we need a savior. We can't even govern ourselves. And then there's the whole argument that me and Sam had about the Apostle Paul and how he sent letters supposedly to the Church of Rome, making the argument, if you read Romans, because that's the book of Romans, that like God, that what is it?
That God ordained the authority of all.
Yeah, the divine right of kings on the divine right of kings as them as God. Like, basically, you serve two gods. You serve God, and you also serve them as God, and you serve them as God actually over God. So
that's a really perverted interpretation of Paul. I think that it's easy to get to that conclusion if you.
And when we say God, we're not talking about the source. We're talking about Yahweh, the demented people, and punished people, and told people to go kill other people, and, you know, like told people to sacrifice animals to him or whatever, and told people that they should circumcise their children as a fucking testament to their pact with him. You know, whatever. Like, that's not I don't consider that to be the source of creation. The real where the laws of creation actually come from.
You know, the past is a foreign country, Jared, and like the way that people were in the past, the level of consciousness that people were at was very different, and like very we call it primitive because there's things like sacrifice, like, and slavery, fucking shit like that. But the fact is, like, yeah, man had a very, very crude, primitive heart, and it developed throughout history. Wouldn't you say that, like, the intellect and soul in man has developed, you know, collectively and gradually it's developed like that. So as to make obsolete things like blood sacrifice, you know, but you know these are lessons that are like in the text of the Old Testament, like the story of Jacob and Isaac. I believe it is that the Lord sent an angel to command Jacob to sacrifice his son Isaac on a mountaintop to the Lord.
Yeah, there's a bunch of examples. Yeah, but that's kind of fucked up, right? As a testament of faith.
Literally,
right?
the point of that story is that it definitively marks the end of a millennia-old practice of bloodshed. It marks the end of blood sacrifice, because the end of that story is God making a new covenant that says, like I will never require like human bloodshed or like fucking, yeah, and like it was like a promise. It was like saying that like human sacrifice is no longer something that will ever be like required by me, and really it never was, and it was a misunderstanding, it was a misapprehension the entire time. And the thing is, how do you get out of darkness? You have to like climb your way up a stairway of misapprehensions until it becomes, you know, like until the darkness becomes light. But like fucking there's a lot of steps along the way, and I think that like the image of God in the Old Testament is the image of like a, you know, like it's like a development. It's a process. It's a picture of a process in motion.
So your point is that that Yahweh is actually a loving and caring being that we should all worship.
Yahweh.
Okay.
Is
anyway,
human construction based that's totally like based in the mind of primitive men.
Look, the point I'm making here is this idea of original sin and thinking that man can't govern himself. That's like what is summing up that even Paul Romano is fucking mind controlled of. That's called a false worldview. They call that worldview poisoning. Like it's a false worldview because hold on. Da 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 da. Oh, did I spell that right? Come on, load already. Damn it. Da 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 da. We are programmable. Da da da. We have no inherent qualities. Da da da. Everything we know is learned from our da 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 environment. The general grammar. The general grammar is how we learn and pick up and learn everything. It's not like that we're programmed it's not that we're inherently evil. Okay? You learn by example and you pick up what's most influential. Now let's talk about memetics for a second, because the grammar step, the who, what, where, and when of a subject is known as a science called memetics, which is the way that that anything that can be imitated is transferred and imitated, and that's how it spreads like a virus. Like memetics is the true virus. This virus that everybody's fucking talking about. Oh, the virus. What they're talking about is the fucking truth meme, the fucking God meme. They don't want everybody to catch the God meme or the truth meme, because it's a fucking powerful fucking meme. But you know what else is also another powerful meme? In fact, I think it's actually more influential. I could make the argument, that out of all the memes, what's the most powerful, influential meme ever? It's got to be the truth of the God meme, right? What about violence? Isn't violence the most influential meme of all time? It's more influential than God or the truth. It's like if anything's gonna be imitated because it influenced you, the most thing that would influence you out of anything is violence. Violence is the fucking most hardcore meme ever. There's nothing more influential than it. It's the most infectious meme in the world. The most infectious virus in the world is violence. And when violence happens, people don't know what to do with it. They don't unless they have truth, they can't heal themselves. Unless they have self-knowledge and inner relations and a good, healthy mental mental alchemy, a good mental fortitude, they will fall into the abuse victim cycle. Mark Passio has talked about this. This is actually his slide.
Before before you go on, there's a theory that very, very much so plays into what you're talking about how violence is one of the most powerful memes that's like, you know, like inseminated the world and just diffused itself completely everywhere, and it's like fucking chlamydia or something. You can't get rid of it, you know, like.
Well, no, you can get rid of it.
Okay, but wait.
You can't. You don't have to be affected.
I was just making a.
You don't have to be affected like that.
I was just making a point. I was just saying it's really sticky. It sticks around. But there's a theory called generative anthropology by Rene Girard, and he's an anthropologist who came up with this theory that violence stems from the original memetic act of imitating somebody else, it goes that there was tension until somebody committed an act of violence, and that created calm and catharsis, and then that created the conditions for repeating that act, because it was in people's memory that what follows violence is catharsis or something like that.
Well, no, check this out. What follows violence is a chemical reaction and an experience, just like any other drug. Just like any drug, you experience a chemical soup mixture when you experience trauma and abuse. When you experience violence, which is trauma to your well-being. It's like trauma because it's the most hardcore meme. Your whole life is changed forever.
Yeah.
And whether you're a witness of it, or whether you're the abuser, or whether you're the victim. And what happens is we want this. There's a real thing called chemical addiction. People have like the drug addictions, but that's really all that is chemical addictions. They want a certain soup mixture to experience over and over again because it's like a way of life. To experience this certain chemical mixture, chemical soup that you like, that you're comfortable with. And violence makes you. It's like a drug that makes you want to experience it again, so that you can evaluate and determine what exactly it is that you just witnessed and experienced. It's like this, like whoa, what the fuck was that? Let me try that one more time. And the way that you're going to experience that chemical mixture and to recreate the violence that you absorbed because of how hardcore influential it was, the only way that you're going to recreate that chemical mixture is to identify yourself with either the abuser or the victim. You either see yourself as the victim in the scenario and you sympathize with the victim and you hate the abuser, or you sympathize with the abuser as like that person deserved it, and you relate with the sentiment behind the violence. And you either way, whatever mixture you like, you want to get that mixture again, so you recreate the trauma, unless you apply knowledge, care, and will.
Right.
You have to care, you have to have knowledge of yourself, you have to have the will to do it. But you have to be aware of this cycle. You have to be aware of like the degrees in which someone can fall by getting so addicted to that mixture that they end up dying because they're abusing themselves off the edge of a cliff because it's like a drug. Like you want more and more, and you have to get the next big high, because it's like you become complacent and calloused to a certain degree of violence, and you don't get the same chemical reaction anymore when you recreate it. So you have to up the ante or whatever to continually get that chemical that you want, so you can experience the way you like.
Why do we have to experience violence to learn from it, though?
No, but no, we have to. Violence is real. Violence exists. Violence affected us.
Yeah, right. It's just there. It's there.
It's there, and
Yeah.
and you have been affected by it.
I think that is a useful definition of original sin, is the fucking sin that you're born into. Like, literally, like, it's original, it's there before you're there. Like, there's violence before you're born, and so you have to deal with it.
That's true. That is a good point. Is Blazing on the other package? All right, so this brings me to my next point. Like, this is the abuse victim cycle. Okay, but I have to explain where this comes from, guys. The reason why there's this thing called the abuser and the victim anyway, the reason why violence manifests this way as either it always has these two things. It always has an abuser and then it always has a victim. The reason why this exists is because there's this principle, it's like we were talking about, hermetic principles last week or 2 weeks ago. There's this principle of gender. Which is that you'll see these aspects in everything that exists in this construct that we live in, like the virtual construct or whatever. But the way that principle of gender relates to the abuse victim cycle is this idea of what's it called? Come on. The masculine and feminine brain. Not saying that one side of your brain is fully masculine, is fully everything that has to do with, you know what I mean? I'm not saying it like that. What I'm saying is that consciousness,
taken as a totality,
as is comprised, yes,
will see
and
these
there is something to that though. There is some kind of wirings in the right and left brain which is related to those things, but it still uses the full brain for the activity. So when you measure the activity, it's like it's still brain activity that's functioning as a whole. See, the thing is about these two forces, so sacred masculine and sacred feminine. See what Google doesn't give you shit. It's supposed to be the best fucking search engine in the world and shit. They make it sound all woo woo.
Well, like
I don't have the slides ready for this presentation. Right. And obviously, I'm not sure. Like, I should probably have these slides ready that are better available. But fuck all this imagery.
That might be useful. It's a really short chapter. You could just read that.
I'll just read this real quick. The great seventh hermetic principle, the principle in gender, embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything, that the masculine and feminine principles are ever present and active in all phases of phenomenon, on each and every plane of life. At this point, we think it well to call your attention to the fact that gender in its hermetic sense and sex in the ordinary accepted use of the term are not the same. The word gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. A moment's consideration will show you that the word has a much broader and more general meaning than the term sex, the latter referring to the physical distinctions between male and female living things. Sex is merely a manifestation of gender on a certain plane of the great physical plane, the plane of organic life. We wish to impress this distinction upon your minds, for the reason that certain writers who have acquired a smattering of the Hermetic philosophy have sought to identify the seventh Hermetic principle with wild and fanciful and often reprehensible theories and teachings regarding sex. The office of gender is solely that of creating, producing, generating, etc., and its manifestations are visible on every plane of phenomena. It is somewhat difficult to produce proofs of this along scientific lines, for the reason that science has not as yet recognized this principle as of universal application, but still some proofs are forthcoming from scientific sources. In the first place, we find a distinct manifestation of the principle of gender among the corpuscles, ions, or electrons, which constitute the basis of matter as science now knows the latter, and which by forming certain combinations form the atom, which until lately was regarded as final and indivisible. The latest word of science is that the atom is comprised of a multitude of corpuscles, electrons, or ions, the various names being applied by different authorities, revolving around each other and vibrating at a high degree in intensity. But the accompanying statement is made that the formation of the atom is really due to the clustering of negative corpuscles around a positive one, the positive corpuscles seeming to exert a certain influence upon the negative corpuscles, causing the latter to assume certain combinations and thus create or generate an atom. This is in line with the most ancient Hermetic teaching, which have always identified the masculine principle of gender with the positive and the feminine with the negative poles of electricity, so-called. Now, a word at this point regarding this identification. The public mind has formed an entirely erroneous impression regarding the qualities of the so-called negative pole of electrified or magnetized matter. The terms positive and negative are very wrongfully applied to this phenomenon by science. The word positive means something real and strong, as compared with a negative unreality or weakness. Nothing is further from the real facts of an electrical phenomenon. The so-called negative pole of the battery is really the pole in and by which of new forms and energies is manifested. There is nothing negative about it. The best scientific authorities now use the word cathode in the place of negative. The word cathode coming from the Greek root meaning descent, the path of generation, etc. From the cathode pole emerged the swarm of electrons or corpuscles. From the same pole emerged those wonderful rays which have revolutionized scientific conceptions during the past decade. The cathode pole is the mother of all of the strange phenomena which have rendered useless the old textbooks and which have caused many long accepted theories to be regulated to a scrap pile of scientific speculation. The cathode or negative pole is the mother principle of electrical phenomenon and of the finest forms of matter as yet known to science. So you see, we are justified in refusing to use the term negative in our consideration of the subject and in insisting upon substituting the word feminine for the old term. The facts of the case bear us out in this, without taking the Hermetic teachings into consideration, and so we shall use the word feminine in the place of negative in speaking of that pole of activity. The latest scientific teachings are that the creative corpuscles or electrons are feminine. Science says, oh my god, they are composed of negative electricity. Hey Sam, God, it's getting hot. We say they are comprised of feminine energy. A feminine corpuscle becomes detached from, or rather leaves, a masculine corpuscle and starts on a new career. It actively seeks a union with a masculine corpuscle, being urged thereto by the natural impulse to create new forms of matter or energy. One writer goes so far as to use the term, it at once seeks of its own volition a union, etc. This detachment and uniting form the basis of the greater part of the activities of the chemical world. When the feminine corpuscle unites with a masculine corpuscle, a certain process is begun. The feminine particles vibrate rapidly under the influence of the masculine energy and circle rapidly around the latter. The result is the birth of a new atom. This new atom is really composed of a union of the masculine and feminine electrons or corpuscles, but when the union is formed, the atom is a separate thing, having certain properties, but no longer manifesting the property of free electricity.
And who wrote this? Manly P. Hall? Like,
the process of detachment or separation of the feminine electrons is called ionization. These manifest the varied phenomenon of light, heat, electricity, magnetism, attraction, repulsion, chemical affinity, and the reverse, and similar phenomenon.
I do like ionized alkaline water.
I hope I didn't skip a line there.
Maybe because I like women. It's because I'm so
all of this
straight
arises.
that I like ionized water.
These electrons or corpuscles are the most active workers in nature's field. Arising from their unions or combinations, manifest the varied phenomenon of light, heat, electricity, magnetism, attraction, repulsion, chemical affinity, and the reverse, and similar phenomena. And all this arises from the operation of the principle of gender on the plane of energy. The part of the masculine principle seems to be that of directing a certain inherent energy toward the feminine principle, and thus starting into activity the creative processes. But the feminine principle is the one always doing the active creative work, and this is so on all planes. And yet each principle is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. In some of the forms of life, the two particles are combined in one organism. For that matter, everything in the organic world manifests both genders. There's always the masculine present in the feminine form, and the feminine form, and vice versa. There's always the masculine present in the feminine form, and there's the masculine present in the feminine. I think it meant in the masculine form and the feminine form.
Yeah.
And vice versa. There's femininity in feminism, in the feminine principle and in the masculine principle.
Like
they're
a yin yang.
they're like in order for a masculine to be truly masculine, it needs
A little bit of feminine.
it needs the feminine. And really what these are is the principle of self-ownership and the principle of non-aggression.
Yeah.
That's what
You
it.
can also see it. I mean, another. What's the word?
I mean, when it comes to
amplification of this
when it comes to consciousness, what we're talking about is like everything that's feminine, like art, creation, like birth, and it's all based on this idea of not worrying about the self at all, worrying only about the creation of the generation of the world or whatever.
One time I woke
and
up.
Then
one time I woke up.
But in order for it to be its true self, it needs the principle of self-defense and self-ownership for it to be truly feminine.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll destroy itself.
Right.
It'll resort to being a slave.
Yeah. One time,
and having relationships with tyrants.
Like a while back, I think it was a little bit after you first told me about Mark Passio. It was probably even I don't know. It was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I woke up with just this weirdly bold phrase in my head that was just the generative principle. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And I looked it up, and it actually pointed, I think it pointed back to the Kybalion or something. You should go Google it. Well, okay, so there's a...
This is some fucking obfuscation right here.
I don't know. It might be helpful, to look at. No, really, it might be interesting to look at what it means in other fields. I don't think that's intentional obfuscation.
Okay, so you guys understand. There's this thing called the sacred masculine and sacred feminine.
And when they come together, they generate things.
They
right?
generate things. Yeah. Otherwise, like, you fall into this. Otherwise, you fall into this relationship. This is the relationship that masculine and feminine, that those two, because they're always trying to, like Coke and Pepsi and the red versus the blue. It's like people with mommy issues and people with daddy issues, and like trying to pit mommy versus daddy, or trying to make you pick one parent, hate the other parent, or like only identify as a man or a woman, you know what I mean, and not like the idea of mental gender, of like coming into balance with these two aspects and accepting who you are, you know what I mean, versus like trying to only identify with one element of yourself and then hate the other one, and despise anything like women who despise femininity, or that's like feminism despises femininity.
We have Randy.
They don't want women to be anything. Oh, nice, you finally, that's pretty dope. What is he saying?
He just said, hey guys.
Oh, well, at least we got one listener.
Yeah.
We got one loyal listener. Fucking everybody else left because they shut the stream down.
Yeah. But so you're saying that for any form of abuse has to do with a unhealthy dynamic between masculine and feminine elements, either inside of yourself or within between people. Yeah.
So this isn't the main topic, you guys. I was just covering this to show like how also like the idea of original sin is this idea of violence and the effect that it's had on the psyche when they don't have knowledge, and as a result they hate themselves, and they don't care about even themselves, and therefore you don't even have the will. But if you have these things, you can yourself from trauma, and realize that violence is this thing in the world that exists, but you can choose how to respond to it that isn't these two things. And it's about balancing these two elements of gender in you. It's like you have this thing called the sacred masculine and this thing called the sacred feminine. You have this thing called non-aggression and this thing called self-ownership or self-defense. And if you don't exercise one enough, you fall into this relationship. You fall into this relationship if you don't exercise this. If you don't exercise them in a balanced fashion.
Wait. The thing is, it's not just you that has to be balanced. You could be balanced, but still have to go through the cycle. Wait. Yeah. The outcome of being a balanced person is that gradually your surroundings become more balanced, and then you get to a place where you don't have to interact with violence every day, right? But you have to start from within and then still go through encountering violence, but go through it like constantly going through that green experience of healing every time through knowledge, care, and will, and you become a lot wiser that way, and then eventually you stop encountering as much violence because of the law of attraction that has to do with like.
It has to do with memology and what we talked about last week with the idea of so look at this. So you're are you ready to move on?
I just want to say one more thing. Is that this abuse victim cycle as applied to the male-female dynamic or masculine-feminine, but it's interesting because I immediately thought of I don't know, Jungian. I'm always thinking of Jungian like notions, and one of them is that he compared marriage to a crucible in alchemy, which is like, early chemistry. A crucible, and it's also used in chemistry. A crucible is a stone bowl that you place chemical agents inside of, and they react inside of the crucible, and they something happens, some kind of reaction occurs, but it wouldn't be able to occur unless there is a crucible there holding it together,
Yeah.
And that's what marriage is for the male and the female, masculine and feminine principles. It's a binding principle that holds them together so that they go through this abuse victim cycle. That is the reaction that happens. They go through this abuse victim cycle because every single person in this world is imbued with being impressed with violence, from an early age.
Yeah.
And so everybody has to go through this abuse victim cycle.
Yeah, everybody has to because violence exists and because we are raised without knowledge. Yes. But it doesn't have to be this way. If you raised your kids right, where you taught them natural law and the understanding of things like this, so they understand I don't want to be either one.
No, but
that's what it started out for me. I don't want to be a victim and I don't want to be an abuser, and that's all it is. You go through your day not being those things consciously, and you find yourself living in accordance with the law. It's that's how you live in accordance with the law. You understand that there's this dynamic of consciousness, and there's this dynamic to the law.
Here's the thing: you could be a perfectly balanced as an individual, but the fact of the matter is that our biology, our spirit, whatever you call it, requires us to find love in a mate, and when at a certain point going through a relationship. And coming and the other sex. You guys are sharing each other's bodies. Yeah, right. So what I'm trying to say is,
but
no. What I'm trying to say, Jared, yes, but no.
Exactly,
no,
right?
No. Where I was going with this is that once you learn how to not be an abuser or a victim by yourself, you get to the next level, and the next level is harder because you have to learn how to not be an abuser or a victim with another person who you love intimately as yourself. It's not like they are you. That would be unhealthy and weird and gross and pathological and fucking bad. But
to love another person that's someone who's different than you.
No. To regard your lover as yourself. That is disgusting. That's.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but
that's why I said the opposite would be to love what's different than you.
But to basically to not respect the difference between the two of you would be really gross. But to love someone as yourself means to place the same amount of value on them, and that means it's if you're not going to let yourself be an abuser or victim, you're not going to let them be an abuser or a victim of you,
Yeah.
But how do you do that? Because it's not exactly voluntary. Sometimes somebody just decides to abuse you or victimize themselves, and
people are addicted to this chemical release.
Yeah.
So they're gonna try to drag you into these help me create this situation where I can get this chemical release.
Just to add a little bit more balance to this picture, it's not just them doing it; it's you doing it too. Because
you're attracted to it or you're repelled by it, right? Some people are attracted to that.
Even if you're a master at not being an abuser or a victim in the world by yourself, you don't know shit about being in a relationship with somebody, because that's like a holification of things that you have to deal with, and that's what the institution of marriage is really useful, I guess, for historically is creating a framework for two people who are would normally abuse and victimize each other, it forces them to come together and go through these things, but hopefully find that green, that inner solution, which is to grow through it, and then that's how you truly become one, because after you go through that with somebody intimately, there's no need to go through it with anybody else. You found your partner, you know, like yeah. So, but I'm just trying to say, like, this all very much so applies to. Oh, and Randy's saying the connection is choppy.
The connection's now getting choppy?
Is it still choppy?
That's bullshit. Not... What is it? What did it say?
It says excellent connection.
It says excellent connection. So, it might be yours, Randy, or it might be ours, because I'm still trying my best here with what I got. So, anyway, so are you ready to move on, Sam?
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the real topic of today, which is this controversy I found with natural law. And I think that going into it would explain a lot when it comes to... It would explain a lot when it comes to the difference between...
No, we're good.
Okay, so... I think the best way to illustrate this would be to show the question that I asked Mark Passio here. Okay, so wait, before I show you this video, let me gather my thoughts here. Hold on. So there seems to be these two schools of thoughts when it comes. That's why I need you to listen, Sam. Like, 'cause, okay, there's these two schools of thoughts when it comes to how people understand natural law. It's either by the memology, which is it's all based on imitative actions, which means that the idea of the natural laws to behavior are entirely us, are entirely human actions and human decisions is the only thing, and it's basically the idea of self-defense. We're talking about the idea of self-defense is what constitutes actual self-defense. And, no, I'm trying to, like... Give me a second, guys. I need to think about... I'm gonna think about how I'm going to say this. Either the law reacts intelligently, where there's principles outside of our understanding, like the laws of attraction, like we were talking about, what people are attracted to, the relationships that they choose. Is it all like are we the law, is what I'm saying? Are human decisions like is the self-defense principle and people exercising it or not? Is that the law? Is that natural law only? Is people exercising the self-defense principle the only thing that's the law? Or is it the law also behaves intelligently? Like for instance, if somebody kills somebody and gets away, right, Sam? Right. Is there any consequences for that if the people involved don't
Are you talking about like
don't respond to it?
A system of karma that looks like
I'm saying
synchronicity.
Yeah, is there a system of karma? Because the way I understood it was, it's like if you're violating the law and your violence really is the violation of the law. That's why it's the most intense and influential meme of all time. So when you violate the law, you are vibrating at a lower frequency than those who would exercise self-defense or are exercising non-aggression, which means that you would be out of tune. There's this idea of like tunality with the source. If you're and it's all about the behavior that you're doing at the time. Is the will of that behavior, like the behavior itself is either out of tune or in tune with the law, and the more out of frequency you're vibrating at to do that behavior, and the more in tune it is to the source, the more higher vibrational frequency you're vibrating with that behavior. So if you're doing a low vibrational behavior like committing violence against somebody, it's like it's like the world is against you. Instead of, it's like you meet resistance in every step of your way, and the world like seems to like you know what I mean? It's like instantly you're put in your place, or not, if not instantly, eventually, right? It comes around and hits you in the ass when you least suspect it, and it's not necessarily it's not necessarily people that witnessed your previous actions. It's like you're attractive. Like, it's like, you know what I mean, opposite, like how like when somebody's toxic and then they attract other toxic people to like pick up on their energy and then like be like, oh, I'm gonna fuck with this guy. Like, it's like you, like the frequency that you're in with the behaviors that you're doing are attracting certain people of other vibrational frequencies with the behaviors that they're doing.
It's a really easy principle to model, and because it's so easy to model, you could use a ton of different metaphors. Like, you could use the idea of like a wave, like that bounces back and comes back to you. Like, you reap what you sow. That's another one. You could use the idea of like attracts like, or
like attracts like.
You could say, but there's so many different ways.
But I'm talking about specifically though is a certain like out of tune vibrational frequency that's consistent with the
musical principle.
That's the law.
It's a musical principle. It's this. It's like you play something. It's call and return. You should Google that, call and return. That's a principle of memetics, I think, because the idea, it's a form of music where somebody plays something and then somebody else plays something in as a response, and the thing is, it's an organic
da 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 da. Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, what you said influences what I say, and what I say influences what you say, and it's a generative process, right?
Yeah.
So fucking that is what we're talking about when we talk about wait, what was the last page that you were on just then?
Was the oh wait.
Yeah, it was that. It was memetics.
Was this?
We were talking about
the way that certain people with certain
modeling the idea that of the law of attraction, essentially, or karma, and call and response is a good way to model it as well.
Okay, so you put out you put out a vibrational a tune.
That's influenced by your signal.
Yeah, exactly. You put out a signal with your memes, and then you get a response back from with those memes.
Yeah, or that's like generated using an algorithm.
So with that in mind, we have these two schools where it's like, look, I think that in a way both of them are true, and that's why I think this is getting a deeper understanding of how memology works with natural law and free will. So the best way, I think this. Last week, this is Mark Passio's show. What on what's happening? Last week I called into his show, and this is what the questions that I asked, and I got a very interesting response from Mark Passio. Are you ready, Sam?
Yeah.
Morality is all about. They are objective truths. They are not opinions. They are not whims, likes, preferences, or opinions that can change over time. They are immortal principles, eternal principles that can never be taken out of effect in the universe. And this is what we have to try to convey. That this has nothing to do with what some person wrote down. Natural law is not written by a human hand. Natural law is written in creation. It's written in the universe itself. It is written in the human heart. And people cannot grasp that for some crazy reason. They cannot grasp that is what it is. And until we understand that's what it is, we're going deeper and deeper and deeper into horror and bondage. And folks, I blame a lot of people in the anarchist movement, a lot of people in the freedom movement, because a lot of them are moral relativists. You ask a lot of the people in the freedom movement, do you think morality is objective or subjective? And a lot of them will go, oh, it's totally subjective. Human beings make up their own standards of morality, and it can be different for every person. That is so prevalent in the alleged freedom community that What you are going to have is the freedom to decide whether you go into a left-wing prison or a right-wing prison. That's about it, you know? And you're probably not even going to be able to decide that. So, caller, I think that's really great. And, you know, I think that is what more people really should be out there doing, is just publishing simple things like that. Make it an internet meme, put it out as a little PDF document, record it as a short YouTube video, put it on library. There's a million things that we could do, you know? Let's go to Collet. Collet, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome. Write to comment or question, please. Unmute yourself. You're unmuted from our end. Collet Jared, you're live on What on Earth is Happening.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
All right, I have a question about natural law,
Sure.
consent, and coercion. So, if the self-defense principle isn't used when somebody aggresses upon something that you own and takes it, if you don't use the self-defense principle and consent, whether coerced or through deceit, let that person take it, is that in fact giving it away, making it not theft? I know this sounds like a stupid question. It should be self-evident.
Meaning, if you decide that you are not going to take any retribution upon anyone for thieving from you, then
you're gonna let somebody steal something.
That's within someone's rights. You cannot take action on a thief. Okay. However,
I mean, is it recognized as theft to the law if you let somebody take it?
Absolutely. That they still broke natural law. Okay. So, if someone else witnessed that, I would say they still have the right to treat that person as a thief and all that entails. You know, if you say, I would ask that you not hold them accountable for that because they took from me, I would say you can ask someone else to do that, but I wouldn't say that you can stop them from taking action on them. Right. I'm a little bit more hardcore on thieves when it comes to that, you know? So can you not make it theft? No. But is it your right not to pursue any repercussion upon that individual for the theft that they conducted in the physical world? It is your right not to do anything. But can you tell other people that they can't take action against that person? I don't think you can force them to stand down on action if they witness the theft and want to do something to that person, quite honestly. And guess what? In a society ruled by natural law, theft brutally, you know? And that doesn't mean in the current conditions that we're talking about with, you know, children taking a piece of bread to survive, okay? You could look at the actual situation. But guess what? You know what I would treat brutally? People going door to door and taking somebody else's hard-won stuff that's on their step because Amazon left it there, you know? I would treat that barbarically. Just to be honest, that's what I would do. I would treat it barbarically, you know? You know, God help somebody if I catch them stealing something from me. They're going to be they're going to have a problem on their hands.
Okay, so wait, before we continue, because then there's also another point that we bring up, or that he brings up, and then I ask him about it. But before we get to that point, that point right there, does giving something away make it not negate the theft if there's consent? So yeah, he has a point that yes, theft is theft whether or not somebody consented to the theft or not. Yes. It's still theft.
Yes.
But what I wanted to follow up with, I didn't get a chance to ask him, is if somebody like coerces you, holds a gun to you, or threatens, so I kill your family or something, unless you do something, and you do that thing to avoid punishment from the person who threatened you, does that consent, doing it willfully, does that make it not theft?
I mean, okay, like he would probably say, "Oh, that's an interesting question." But I mean, is it the same
thing? Is it the same thing?
It's another way of rephrasing the question of coercion, which is to say, how responsible are you for your action if you're coerced? You know, are you? Would you say you're not responsible for an action that you took if you were coerced to take it? Like that's the question you're asking, right?
Yeah. You're still responsible for that action,
exactly.
Whether or not. No, but obviously that's not the question.
Oh, the question is, are you consenting?
No. The question is, if you consent and give it willfully, gave it willfully. Was there theft?
Okay, so the question is, was there theft if coercion was used to acquire consent?
Yes.
To obtain consent.
Yes. And it's like, is it the same thing as like theft has taken place? Because obviously, you put somebody under duress, you're violating their natural law by threatening them. But are you really stealing from them?
Yeah, exactly. It's an indirect form of theft. It's exploitation.
But but is it really theft if it was given away?
That's the question. Is theft is exploitation theft?
No, but the thing is look. We're judging this when the way I'm judging this is the law, does karma work? Does being in tune with the source, giving the thing away and not exercising the self-defense principle, and by relinquishing your self-defense principle and by giving something away willfully under coercion, consenting under coercion. Not just forgiving somebody for when they take something, consenting under coercion and giving it willfully, not just letting somebody take it, but giving it willfully. Is that not theft? Is it? I mean,
it is theft.
I'm not making the argument of whether or not it's violent coercion.
Yeah. So
but is violent coercion the same thing as theft?
He's obliging you to give it to him.
But look.
Yeah,
but look.
That's the thing. Is if you're compelled to do something.
But we're looking at it. But again, I keep coming back to this. We're looking at under the lens of the law being something other than just the potentiality or the condition in which the potentialities of free will behavior are created, and the free will response of the individuals involved.
I think this could be answered by looking at intention. I think you could say that the law judges the intention of man, the heart of man. Not exactly the outcome of his action.
No, that's not true. See, like when you go down that path, then we can say that like the intention justifies the means, the kind of thing. The idea is that the action itself is either a violation or not. It's not the intention that makes it violative.
I think that going down that path radically divorces action.
You can say like it's for the good of my son, and then still kill somebody, and it's still equally wrong because of the way that it impacts, because of the way violence and the way that will come
Here's
around. It'll come around again to you because of the meme that you spread in your environment and your community.
We can never be 100% sure what the consequences of our actions are. We can't even be 100% sure.
Oh, we can't?
We can't even be 100% sure that the sun will rise tomorrow. We
Oh
can't
my
be
goodness.
100% sure that a fucking asteroid won't hit the Earth right now.
No, that's not true.
Jared, I'm just trying to make the point that empiricism has tried to make, which is that almost all truth is inductively derived truth, which means it's just based on the generalization based on observations. It's generalization based on previously made observations, and it could at any point stop being the case. There's no fucking premise that states that what has been must continue to be. You know, that's just a fucking that's an assumption on our part.
Well, yeah, because free will is involved. We can still choose to not.
The universe could end at any moment. Okay, this I'm talking about. Ultimately, it comes down to the fact that the source or God or whatever you're talking about sustains existence, and every moment of existence is sustained by the
laws of creation,
the ultimate power of the projection.
Okay, but
that which is projecting.
Sam, the laws of creation are eternal and perfect.
But something is projecting the projection, and it could decide to stop.
Okay, well, that's a crazy what if. And considering that we've never seen anything close to that.
Okay, now we have to step into a more deeper primal question. Is the projection the source? No, it's not. It's not the source, right?
Yeah,
It's not the source.
No, it's only...
So the source could stop projecting if it wanted to.
I mean, it's an idea, but I don't think that it's a possibility, because obviously the laws are immutable, and we've never seen, we have no evidence for that, and we have all the evidence for the contrary.
Okay. I'm trying to just build up arguments around the case that when we take actions, we cannot be 100% certain of the outcome. We can only be certain of our intention when we took the action. We can only be certain of our intention. We can be like confident in the outcome, but we can't be certain of it, right? Like, that's what I'm talking about. And so it's like I think that the law judges your intention, and that because there's a close marriage between intention and action.
That's not, the law doesn't judge like a person. I don't think that you're thinking of it like the law judges like a person, and it's like, no, the law is, it's a certain way, and you have certain reactions, like, you know what I mean? Like, there are certain conditions that are created from certain actions that will always be created by those certain actions, always. That doesn't mean that people will respond to those conditions because of free will every time.
Yeah, see, I think
and in different ways.
Is a radical,
but the condition itself will nonetheless always be the same condition created.
The position you're taking, I think, is a radical separation or divorce between action and intention, where in your world, in your idea of the world, somebody could take all of the right actions but be a psychopath. And they would be fine. They would be okay.
They would live in accordance with the law, and they'd probably be fine. Yeah.
Okay, so the thing is that does not, in my opinion, in my idea of the world, that doesn't occur, because somebody who has psychopathic intentions acts on them.
Well, no, the way that they get around the memes of the memes hurting them is that they don't do those things themselves. They get other people to do them for them. Like Mark Passios talked about this.
It comes out one way or the other. That's my idea of the world.
Well, that's how they don't experience. That's how they don't have it come around to them, because they're not the ones taking those actions.
No, if it comes out of them one way or another, then it comes back to them one way or another.
And they have bodyguards.
Don't you understand that, Jared?
They
even if they indirectly send out the violence, that doesn't absolve them from indirectly receiving the violence back.
You're right. They could, but they also.
It's just ambiently received.
But
it's like static electricity in the air. You build it. If you're gonna build this toxic energy, you're gonna get shocked at some point.
Yeah, you're right. That's why I'm saying, like, is there faith in the law that's beyond just this understanding of the law and how it works with memetics? Because it's like, if that's the case, now listen.
It judges intention. That's what I'm saying.
No, but okay. Well, let's listen. Let's listen to the rest of this real quick.
Okay, they're not going to have to worry about the police. That's all I'm saying. So that's the whole thing. Is you can say I forgive them and I'm going to let it go and I'm not going to do nothing, and that's your right. But I wouldn't say even that person can say, oh, hey, the person across the street witnessed the entire thing. I'm going to say I can stop you from doing anything to that person. I don't think you can under true natural law, because that behavior is actionable. It's actionable. They took one of your rights. That's theft. They're taking your right to your labor. And that's really a claim. See, people who conduct theft on other people, it's like saying, you're my slave. You did the labor to acquire that, and now I'm just taking it. So I'm taking your labor, and that's a claim on your body. People got to learn how to keep their fucking hands off of other people's possessions. Learn what you own and what you don't learn.
The argument I would make against his hardline stance here is that.
Wait, well, then finish. Just like.
No, I understand his argument enough to respond to it. Okay. Well, he's just reiterating it at this point. I understand it.
I make a comment and then we go.
Let me just respond directly to this and say what I was gonna say. Okay. It would have really been helpful if I could just say it from the beginning instead of you. Okay, just let me say it.
Okay, go ahead.
So he's saying it doesn't matter if if somebody else got stolen from, that you are free to, what's it called? Induce retribution, or get.
I would really appreciate it if we could finish this, and as the presenter, because this is what I was getting to. This whole idea of eye for an eye. It's gonna be, it's gonna come out in time, Sam.
Okay, but just this the specific point of it's okay to get some property back from somebody else that was stolen from. The argument I would make against that specific situation is that it's not your property, so you're not entitled to get it. Because if you got it from them, even if you had the intention of bringing it back to that person and giving it to them, you're still actionably stealing it from
the reason. The reason why you would why retribution is right isn't just for the person whose property was stolen. The idea that he's making is that the action is actionable, meaning that anybody who witnesses that has the right to retaliate against that person for. This is the argument he's making, this eye for an eye argument. I would really appreciate it if we could finish this before we talk about it, please.
Okay, but can I just make one last point? Eye for an eye means somebody does something to you, you do something to them. Not somebody does something to him, I do something to them. That is a different thing.
Okay, you're right. That's a good point.
Okay.
I would appreciate it if you would have made that point after we finish this. So let's continue this so that it's more fleshed out before we continue the progression of the conversation.
Learn and don't touch other fucking people's stuff, or they have a right to be brutally barbaric to you if you violate that right. I don't really care what people think of that. I'm saying what the truth is in that situation. In the past, I would have taken it a much lighter-hearted approach about it and tried to explain it much more diplomatically, but I don't care anymore.
Yeah, we're watching.
I'm just going to come out and say it as it is. So the first part of your question, the second part is, if it was witnessed by someone else and somebody else knew that they're dealing with a thief now, the person who was stolen from can ask another person not to do anything to them, but they can't make them do that, as far as I'm concerned.
Obviously,
because they actually violated a right. And whether they violated their rights or someone else's, a violation of someone else's rights is a violation of everyone's rights.
No, I was really just asking if consent somehow negates the theft.
No, it doesn't negate the theft, but it is your right to say, I am not considering it that, therefore I'm going to, quote, let it go. You're not even forgiving the person, because forgiveness would have to work both very seriously sorry for doing that. But, I just think, maybe you give thieves a couple of chances, and then after that, it's on, I mean, like literally, if a person can't rehabilitate themselves out of the behavior of theft, you got to say to them, I almost believe in giving people one chance to rehabilitate. You tell them one time, this is your first warning and your last warning, and then that's being excessively nice. That's being excessively ethical, as far as I'm concerned.
That's his social Darwin.
I'm telling you, I'll tell I'll tell a fucking cop and judge right out in the open. I find anybody stealing my property, they're going to be hurt. I don't give a fuck what you do. You're not going to take from me, and I'm going to lay down like some little bullshit pussy. So, I think that's how people should treat thieves. And we shouldn't need cops. Just go get them. That's it. And that goes with mafias. That goes with fucking violent drug cartels. You want to sell drugs, do it peacefully. You want to be violent about it, people should come hunt you. They should come and hunt you. It goes the same for people who think they're God and think they're the fucking gods of the earth. And they own other motherfuckers. And they're our masters and we're their slaves. I think it should have been put down a long time ago. It should have been put down a long time ago.
Play the video. Let me listen to it.
My producer's trying to get my attention. Is he too low?
I don't know. I'm not having any issues.
Yeah. Raise his volume. All right, go ahead.
I was gonna say though, don't you think that we shouldn't resort to punitive violence?
It wouldn't be violence
unless it be, well, I mean, if he's not if it's not to stop an action from happening, and it's punitive.
Not necessarily, because then that means if anybody can get away with it, nobody can do anything to them. If they can't be stopped, if they can't be caught in the act, then no actionable behavior can be done to them, and it wouldn't be violence.
See, right
it
there.
would be
like
self-defense.
Yeah, see that, like, they would get away with it. This idea that they would get away with it if it wasn't for the law of memetics.
No. If it wasn't for the law of actionability, that's the fucking thing.
If it isn't, what he's saying is if people don't exercise,
he's invoking this notion of actionability.
If people don't exercise self-defense, the law that's the only thing that's the only thing about the law. It's just the principle of self-defense.
So his notion of actionability is premised on this idea of this idea that if you don't do something about
like
it,
the self-defense meme is all natural law is.
That basically that you doing something or not doing something creates the law, basically, right? That you enforcing the law or not enforcing the law is what makes the law there or not, right? Like
that's almost like exactly. It's almost like what it's almost like that he's saying that, but I don't know, Sam. Anyway, let's listen to the rest of this real quick. Watch. Just flesh it out.
See, the whole thing is the only violent behavior is an initiation. You can only start violent behavior. If a violent behavior is responded to, it's not violence. It's self-defense. This is part of what people still don't understand about the principle of self-defense. The principle of self-defense is not initiation. The only time violence takes place is when someone starts it.
Hey, Mark, so if somebody killed somebody and then they escaped,
yes,
and then a bounty hunter,
their behavior is still actionable. That behavior...
And a bounty hunter chases them down and takes them out. He initiates violence on them.
No, he does not. Incorrect. That is an incorrect understanding of natural law. The person would still be able to go after that individual and conduct harm to them. That would still be self-defense. Because the person has no right to do that and act as a predator.
Here's a little rabbit hole.
Like eye for an eye,
scenario.
basically.
Here's a little rabbit hole on this scenario. Let's say somebody commits murder, gets away with it, and somebody else, not a bounty hunter, who doesn't know this person, commits violence on them, intends to commit violence on them. If they were to trespass on them, would that be considered violence, or is there some sort of spiritual bounty on them that makes them allow, or actionable, no matter who or what the intention is, right? Do you know what I mean? Is there some sort of karmic debt that they owe that anybody could trespass on them now?
Yeah, that's what exactly. That's a good point. It's like if you spread the meme, then anybody has the right to inflict that meme on you. Basically,
yeah.
Like you lose if you spread the meme of violence.
Sort of a spiritual status that you acquire.
You acquire a spiritual status of being, of now being open to that meme or something.
Which is I don't buy into that. I think that's a false kind of model.
Like anybody can rightfully, under the law, initiate the same meme upon you that you have initiated. Or is it, or the real question is, like I said, is the law more than just the meme of self-defense? Are there consequences beyond the free will responses to behavior?
This all wraps back to this conversation about Paul when he says, obey the authorities, because his argument was because your behavior, if it was flawless in their eyes, would reflect well on Christ. Therefore, they couldn't condemn you, even in their own laws. They couldn't condemn you, and that's what would convert people. That's what would show the true mark of the church, is that these people are blameless, even in the eyes of the law. The problem is, if the model is like Mark Passio is saying, then
Sorry.
if it's like Paul is saying, then the idea is this, that you do that and your intentions are judged, and the authorities, their intentions are also judged by God, and if they're doing something wicked, that like if they're intending to do something wicked, that like they'll be judged, that there's a sort of justice, all perfect, all powerful, all present justice that occurs in like we don't see it all the time, we only catch glimpses of it, just like how we can't see inside other people's experience, but like the idea is that God brings justice to everybody and everything, and and it's based on our intentions. And then there's the idea that he's saying, which is that justice doesn't always happen, that justice is something that is carried out by individuals only, that the only way that justice can be carried out is by other individuals
who have the right to take those actions.
And that justice has nothing to do with intention. Therefore, you know, the law does not judge our hearts; it only judges our actions. And whose actions? I mean, who was influenced by those actions and the decisions that they take? So in that model, if you're obeying the laws of Rome, you're only judged based on the fact that you're obeying the laws of an evil empire. But if you're judged based on your intention, then you're judged based on the idea that you're trying to reflect well upon God, upon the true law, by being blameless even in the eyes of the empire, you know. So it's like which is it? Are you blameless because of your intentions, or are you condemnable because you're following the law, you know, and like rendering to Caesar what is Caesar's and such, and like so that's the disagreement. It's does the law judge intention or does it judge action?
Does the law judge like a person? And does the law judge like a person, or is it impersonal? It's an impersonal force that has just certain consequences ingrained in its immutability. And also, is it beyond just self-defense? People using self-defense or not? Is there, like, obviously we talked about attraction and attraction and tonality, but then it returned to this idea of call and response, which was the memetics of people and the responses that you get from those memes that you put out there into the meme pool. So it goes back and forth, like I said, this understanding of whether or not it's simply people's actions and people's responses is what the natural laws of behavior are, and also the immutable conditions that are created by certain memes, which is the law part of it. So there's this understanding of the law and the free will, which is the memes and the response and the influenceability and the way that people respond. But then is it also beyond just the memetics of the matter? Is it beyond just the memetics of the matter? And that's where natural law becomes like very vague, and that's where you have to study like the tarot and like the justice card.
I would even go
stuff.
I want to go to scholasticism.
There's cycles and attractions of like the planets and how things play out in accordance.
Right.
But like then again, it all plays out according to law. It's not like cosmic forces are. It's whether or not you're in tune with, and then you're along the path of.
Yeah. You want to hear some crazy, just some crazy
living in alignment to, or living in alignment out of.
Yeah. So like astrology is a good way to observe the. What were we talking about? The law of, like, the natural law. How to observe natural law, the consequences of actions and free will actions, and if you think of the planets and the signs, the zodiac signs, you know, they're all like people. They're personalities. They're so like you can think of them as interacting with each other, you know, and they were planet. The word planet comes from the word in Greek that means wanderer, and implies intention. That implies, because unlike the fixed stars in the very background of the sky, the planets would move around erratically. They would go this way and stop, go backwards, move around. They would just do shit like that. And so they acquired the status of having peculiar intentions. And each of them have a certain personality, attitudes, a specific attitude, and so it's amazing how much astrology holds up. I've been getting more and more into it. Even I'm a Christian, and what made me come around to thinking astrology is actually maybe okay, in God's eyes, is the fact that even in the New Testament, in the nativity scene, and one of the most, maybe the most sacred, moment in the Bible, I don't know, is the birth of Jesus. What accompanies that is, it's Mary, Joseph in a stable, and then who visits them? Astrologers. People that they're called three kings or sages, but the original word translates to astrologer. It's like the astrologers came because they were stargazing people, and they saw this sign placed by God in Bethlehem, and they went to Bethlehem. So there's astrologers in the nativity scene.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They read the skies, and they gleaned meaning from the positions of the planet.
Because of that, they were granted a place of honor in the story of Jesus, and that's an interesting idea to me. And then
But would it be worshiping false gods to go as far as to admit that the astrological bodies affect the inner personalities of our psyche or whatever?
That's the thing. Okay, so the common, yes, it would be. It would be because it's making this false assumption that there's outside a possession. That would be to submit yourself to possession, basically.
But possession exists. Possession of certain energies and inner archetypes and personalities is real.
Possession is based in a misunderstanding or false consciousness, but
Well, no, it's under the impression that demons are not you. They're other forces that aren't you, and they're not parts of you.
Yeah. But okay, do the planets determine what you do or what happens? No, they coincide with what happens. It's coincidental that you know what I mean? There's a synchronistic coherence between what happens in the sky and what happens on Earth. It's as above, so below. It's God created the heavens in such a way as to, and there's scripture that says that God places signs in the skies. I think that's it might be what he's talking about. What it's talking about is the fact that there's an inherent truth to the astrology that's amazing. It's amazing. Just one example, the summer's been the hottest on record. It's been the driest on record. There's extreme droughts, and it's also one of the first times in many years that Mars has been in Aries for a really long time, and Mars is a really hot and dry planet, and Aries is a really hot and dry sign, and it's just crazy. That's just one example of just things are very hot and dry. An apartment burst into flames in my apartment complex a couple weeks ago.
You think the
I'm not saying it causes it. I'm saying it coincides.
It coincides with the likelihood of certain things.
It shows you.
Oh my gosh!
It shows you significant.
Watch yourself around fires this day or whatever, right?
It shows you significant symbols that.
Oh yeah.
That are in time. It has to do with time. It shows you symbols that are temporally significant.
Real quick, guys. I'm not going to go to the quadrivium yet. That's way down the road. But, God damn it, what the hell? Check it out. There's these, in the quadrivium, there's, music and astronomy. It's part of, these are the four main fields in which you can understand anything, and if you have these four things, you can pretty much branch out into any other topic basically, and two of them are music and astronomy, which isn't the same thing as astrology, but it's like
It was for a long time.
it's like the inner teaching and the outer teaching.
Astrology and astronomy used to be the same thing for a long time.
So anyway, guys, let's finish this video and then we'll wrap up. What did I just close it? Oh no, I didn't. Okay, and then we'll wrap up this half. So
Yeah, go ahead.
On another person if they killed the other person in the wrong, which is called murder. If they were defending themselves, exercising self-defense against violence, then no one should go after that person. So if it is determined that that person conducted murder, yeah, somebody can go and get them. So that's natural law. And I don't think any institution needs to do that. The people need to do it. Once you create institutions that will do something that the people are too cowardly to do, you have government again. Nobody but the people themselves have the right to protect their rights. You can't just say, only this institution has the right to do that. Anyone has the right to do that. And that's a hardcore world that I want to see come about. How many people are truly ready for that responsibility? 99.99% of people will say they're not ready for that responsibility. And that's all the time. That's why the world is still in bondage, folks. That's the very reason we're still in bondage. That's all the time we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah, so it's like it's like saying that that the law, like there's the idea that the law is already in place, it's already working, but then this idea of like it's working, but it's working with people under a certain impression of how things are working, and their behaviors are based on those false impressions. So this whole idea of like in a world in which like when he keeps talking about like in a world where natural law is, he's not talking about in a world in which it's not already the same. Like natural law is not already working the way that it already is. What he's saying is that if we can get more people aware of how things are working, with this whole thing with how it works, if more people were more on the level, then the quality of their decisions would manifest a freer world. Would manifest a world in which people don't succumb to toxic relationships with tyrants, and they take responsibility of their own self-defense, which they have the right to do. So hopefully, I'm still a little confused about whether or not this is just like I'm still like wanting some clarification, or I guess I need to like just meditate on it further, or read something else that I haven't read before. But I'm still on the fence about whether or not consenting, or whether or not coercively consenting and giving, like being coerced into giving something to a tyrant is, while admittedly coercion and violence, is it theft? I mean, obviously violence it always has to be theft, but when does the act of giving something under coercion, not just letting somebody, like we were talking about earlier, does that, by like purposefully not exercising self-defense principle and choosing to consent and give of your own volition and free will under consent and under coercion, but still under your own free will and under your own volition, does it not make it theft? Does it negate the theft? Even though it's like somebody violated your body and your sovereignty because they put you under duress. They put you under duress, but then under duress you gave them things. So it's like, are they guilty of stealing those things that you give them under duress, or are they only responsible for putting you under duress? So that's where I'm just a little like, because the implications are horrifying. Like, if if it's the latter, that putting somebody under duress is somehow putting somebody under duress is not theft of the things that the person gives you under duress. That's a horrifying proposition. But anyway, that concludes the presentation of this half, and so we're going to have a short interlude followed by Sam's presentation. So stay tuned.
Okay. So this is Jump King. I guess I'll just play it. I don't know. Let's just say. Actually, will this work? No. Maybe it's only keyboard. You can bounce off walls too. Oh shit. Okay, so I gotta like this. So this is on Steam. This is all Steam shit I'm doing. Oh. Okay. Knock my head into that. So how do I do this part? Oh, you motherfucker. Wait a second. How do you do this? Maybe I go from here. No, wait. You fuck. Shit! Now I see why you want me to play this. Alright. Motherfucking. I have to remember what's on the next screen. I can't remember what's on the next screen. Are you kidding me? This is not going to be a good game for me. No! Getting to that crow better be the end of the game. Seriously. Oh, Jesus Christ. Alright. I feel like that fucking Commodore 64 game or something. Here, hang on a second. Let me change this to Jump King. I'll play this for a little bit. Everything's fucking backwards. Alright, and by the way, since this has no music, I'll put the music back on. Or not no music, but not much. Let's see. Ooh.
Oh, is it like it just
started the music, George.
Chronicles. That wasn't the actual intro. I thought it was gonna be the intro to Gargoyles. I don't know. The playlist I gotta work on. Some of the songs that are in the playlist, oh my god. Some of the songs that are in the playlist, like they have varying degrees of how loud they are. So it's like I have to keep going back and like adjusting the fucking volume because it's inconsistent volume. So that's a problem. So fuck it, I'm not dealing with that. Man, I wish that Dracula game wouldn't have fucked up. I wasn't. Damn it! To hell, fuck! Fuck! You scum fuck! How do you fucking get up there? Get up there. Up there! Oh. Have you guys played this game? The new Jump King. PC Windows only is playing on Steam. More like Steam pile of shit. Fucking Mr. Gimmick, is that what you're talking about? Yes, Omnius Omelet, if you want. How do the controls work? Well, it's like fucking move left, right, and fucking spin out. Unless I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm playing the game wrong. I feel like I'm playing the game wrong. Oh my god. No! Nick Basket. Hey! I'm an asshole. Fuck! Oh God! Oh God!
everybody? Oh. How is everybody doing? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to the second half of...
Hi, Sam.
Well, hi there. Welcome one and welcome all. So yeah, I've been thinking about what I'm going to talk about today. Probably just going to dive right back into the article that I was reading to you guys last week, and hopefully we can finish it up and discuss it. That would be what I want to do. So first I got to recap what that first half was. Let me just get to it. Wait, what? Ego analysis. Oh, yeah. Ego. Spelled wrong. Oh, whoa, it's hella spelled wrong. Jared, what the hell did you do here? Oh.
There it is.
Okay. Oh, boy. The essay is called Sexual Reality and How We Dismiss It. We dismiss it, guys. There's a sexual reality out there, and all of us can't help but dismiss it. That's basically what it's been talking about so far is
sex outside of imitation.
Yeah, our
but we just understood we're nothing but memes. So what is? But sex is a
Right.
biological function, though.
He
so
goes
it's not
deep.
just an imitate. You know what I mean?
He goes deep into the.
It's also a part of the psyche as well.
He goes
so.
into the evolution and development of the superego, and essentially where we left off was a part where he is describing how we've transitioned from being a culture of honor and saving face to a culture that respects the dignity of your personal heartfelt authenticity over tradition, this brings a whole new kind of anxiety. So I'll just start.
Authenticity over tradition.
Yeah. So I'll start right here. It seems as if this pain is caused. Start here. Freedom from ritual means freedom to experience interpersonal anxiety. With regard to my example of hospitality rituals, it is the freedom to risk alienating an unwanted house guest. Not surprisingly, in the face of such a risk, we instinctively fall back on ritual, but where before we took pride in not acting on our feelings, now this is cause for shame. By a kind of paradigm slippage, we now lose faith if we are inauthentic. We are caught in a paradox, feeling compelled to be ritualistically non-ritualistic. This is why we now feel oppressed by the unwanted guest. We are ashamed of our inability to be quote-unquote authentic because authenticity is still understood from within the old paradigm, which is to say that it is ritualistically defined. To review, continuing with my illustration, in the past we could take pride in our ability to treat an unwanted guest as handsomely as the wanted one, not realizing that we could not have handled any greater range of options, that we were in effect making a virtue of necessity. This necessity of interpersonal to avoid interpersonal anxiety forces itself on us when we try to act more assertively we then feel ashamed of having to fall back upon tribal rituals. The ultimate accomplishment in consciousness raising would be to be able to tolerate recognition of our vulnerability to interpersonal anxiety. Essential to the new definition is the capacity to make contact with the partner. We hear that sex is communication, a rather foreign notion to the Indian Muslim, the Taoist, Chinese, the Polynesian, the Victorian, or for most other peoples, past or present. This is why when we ask what sex is for, most people will say that it is an expression of love and the ultimate form of intimacy. This is taken ritualistically, as I have been arguing, with the result that we have been obliged to respond to our partners and to make our partners respond to us. One way to put this is to say that sex is a ritual of possession, is in the process of being replaced by sex as a ritual of mutual affirmation. The new purpose of sex has been structured in the old way, integrated in accordance with our duty-bound habits of thought. In the past, we felt ashamed of not being able to perform in sex. We still do, only now we feel ashamed of wanting to perform. The job of sex. Sex therapists are repeatedly struck by the way most people feel compelled to perform in sex, having to respond on cue. In fact, the conception of sex as a performance is built into the language. We say that a man is or is not able to get an erection. If he is not able to, he is impotent, which is to say, powerless. If he is not able to maintain his erection, we say that he has lost it, not that it got lost or it went away. But as I discussed earlier, when people are asked what sex is for, they don't say anything about it being a test of adequacy or a performance. They say that sex is for procreation, release, or an expression of love and closeness. Yet these are the same people who, when they are not being asked what sex is for, will unapologetically speak of sexual prowess. Yet there is no necessary inconsistency here.
Wait. What's sexual prowess?
That means like vitality or like I don't know, like
like somebody who's good at sex.
Yeah, like skill points.
That person knows how to fuck.
Yeah,
that's an admirable.
Yeah. Or good at seduction as well.
Yeah. Like that person knows how to get it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yet there is no necessary inconsistency here. When people say that sex means release and closeness, it is true that they do not think of themselves as describing sex as a test of adequacy, but they are in fact. But what they are in fact doing is giving the criteria on which the test is to be graded. What sex therapists observe is that in sex, people are trying to be adequate at the new role definitions. They are trying to be adequate in the pursuit of pleasure and intimacy. Sex partners work at being mutually reassuring. Sex talk is all encouragement and flattery. I have at times likened it to infield chatter. Sex means always saying yes. It is all hyperbole. No one believes or expects their partner to believe anything said in sex. Perhaps the most telling clue to sex's performance is the fact that in sex we all try to keep everything as smooth as possible. What does keeping things smooth and always saying yes have to do with release, pleasure, love, or closeness? What we are all doing is trying to act as abandoned and intimate as possible. This is the test. And this is why when asked what sex is for, no one mentions the pressure to be responsive. They just say that sex means being responsive. Recall the biological mystique. This responsiveness is thought of as biological
as a reaction. It's like even in sex, it carries over the abuse victim cycle, like we were talking about. Like if somebody wants to be the taker and the initiator and like the one who like violates, like, you know what I mean? It's like almost like recreating the act of rape, but in sex, kind of like where somebody is the victim of it, but like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? Like somebody is the beta and like wants the other person to torture them, kind of. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And like and then the other person gets like, yeah, it's a masochistic thing, where it's like because that's what resonated when you talked about this idea of wanting to feel the act of as abandoned and intimate as possible, to act as abandoned.
Okay, well, by
as
abandoned, I think what he meant there was in the sense of doing something in abandon, meaning with totally carefree. Totally...
No, he said as abandoned.
No, okay, so. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the meaning I take from it, is that he's saying that we are trying to be as spontaneous as possible, in the sense that, like, we're trying to be as spontaneous as possible. We're trying to be so in the moment that we're lost in abandon, you know, like.
Okay, but no. He said to be as abandoned, like this idea of like laying before somebody your trauma and having them say like, yes, you're okay and I accept you for it, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm abandoned, and the other person like validates your abandonment. Right? Isn't that?
Yeah. Okay.
Is that relevant?
Okay. I mean,
like the idea of validating abandonment.
Okay, I think that might be. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he's.
Somebody wants to be.
Maybe you're talking about closeness, yeah, because okay, so like
if somebody wants to present themselves as a victim to their partner and have their partner love them as a victim.
I don't know. That might be.
I don't know. I'm just like.
Okay. I think that the word abandoned here might have closer to do with release, which means to do something with abandon.
Okay, yeah, but he didn't use abandoned. He
Okay.
didn't use it that way.
Okay, I don't know. Okay. Going on. Recall the biological mystique. This responsiveness is thought of as biological, as a response, as a reaction pattern waiting to be triggered. No matter how hard people work at sex, they still believe that the reaction pattern they are after is spontaneous. They see themselves as working only to trigger it. So it's supposed to be natural. It's supposed to work. Everything's supposed to work. Is if only we just, like, do the right ritual.
Go through the right ritual. Exactly. Yeah. Well, wait a second. What about this idea of like? Okay, never mind. Continue.
Sexual ex cathedra. I said that this is what sex therapists observe, that most people are concerned with proving their adequacy in sex. But when sex therapists are asked what sex is about, they give the same answers as everybody else. Just as everyone else, and despite what they observe in their daily work, sex therapists do not emphasize the way that our orientation towards sex is dominated by the concern with performing and with tests of adequacy. Indeed, they do not mention it at all. This is the most striking example of our rejection of sexual reality. Here is an example from the work of one of our best known and most widely respected husband and wife sex therapy team. There is nothing unusual about this example. I have chosen it only because it is because of its unimpeachable representativeness. As they note in their introduction, the Zussmans wrote a book based on their clinical work with over 8 holes. What is of interest to us is their statement about the nature and purpose of sex. Regarding the purpose of sex, they declare, quote, "If you want to get really close to another person, sharing your sexuality is the most intense, they mean the best, form of communication available," end quote. And regarding the nature of sex, quote, There is no standard to meet, no goals that must be reached, no rules except a responsibility to not hurt others or allow yourself to be hurt." End quote. Now, I hardly need to tell you that this was not a summary of what the Zussmans found to be the nature and purpose of sex from the work with the 800 couples. I would be surprised if even one of these couples experienced sex in the way that Zussmans described it, without goals or rules and as an unparalleled form of communication. The obvious answer to this point is that the couples that the Zussmans worked with are deviant. But I think we are entitled to ask, deviant from what? The Zussmans would undoubtedly say that these couples are deviant from the couples that they did not work with. So they worked with 800 couples and based their conception of the nature and purpose of sex on couples that they did not work with.
Obviously they're deviant from their fucking like mind-controlled culture and the way that, you know what I mean?
Okay, so yeah, you're
and the pornography.
Right,
basically.
right. So you're with Freud. You're with Freud. Everybody is deviant. Everybody is repressed.
Everybody has a certain degree of garbage memes when it comes to everything, and especially sex, because of pornography, because of the introduction of pornography.
No, but everyone would
society.
be fun. It's supposed to work properly. If only people weren't so fucked up, it would work properly, right? That's like the idea. Like and like okay, so the answer to this point might be that there's nothing unusual about inferring normal functioning from the study of pathological functioning. However, as you might expect, the Zussmans offer no basis for their inference. It is as if from a study of the weather one were to conclude that a normal day is sunny and clear. That the normal day is sunny and clear. Think of it this way. How many couples would the Zussmans have to work with before they began to revise their conception of the nature and purpose of sex? 1,600? 3,200? 32,000? I think the answer is that even if they worked with everybody, this would have no effect on their conception of sex. If they worked with everybody and found that everybody felt this pressure to prove their adequacy in sex, the Zussmans would feel bad about it, but it would not affect their conception of sex. They would just think they were witnessing an epidemic of sexual afflictions. Indeed, we've read about such epidemics in the daily newspaper. Michael Carrera, a prominent sex educator, made a prototypic statement in a newspaper interview publicizing his recent and generally well-received resource book on sex for the general reader. Quote, "People want to have an orgasm like a grand mal seizure. In their frantic search, they forget who they are with and why they are there. Instead of following their own inclinations, they tend to measure themselves against outside standards." People are so frantic about having superior orgasms as measured against, quote, outside standards, end quote, that they forget who they are, or forget why they are there. They forget the nature and purpose of sex. They forget that there are no rules or standards in sex, and that it is not a test of adequacy. So there are no rules or standards in sex unless you forget that, and at least according to Carrera, most people usually do. There's an irony here.
Well, there are some standards to sex when it comes to like what people will tolerate. Because like obviously, so you know what I mean. If somebody says no, that's a standard. Yeah.
There's an irony here that if it is true that people forget that sex is a test of adequacy. Yeah. So right, it's not true to say that sex. There's no rules in sex. That's bullshit. Yeah. Okay. So, therapists of all kinds forget that they, perhaps more than anyone else, take the ability to fulfill sex role demands as an ultimate test of adequacy or maturity. Although this practice by no means began with Freud, he gave it much of its present currency among therapists. He quite literally adopted prevalent sex role definitions as his measure of maturity. Thus, impotence was explained as an inhibition of aggression, and frigidity as a resistance to surrender, since it was clear who was supposed to be aggressive and who passive. Despite the fact that sex is so obviously treated as a test of adequacy by both laypersons and professionals, everyone feels neurotic about experiencing it this way. I have elsewhere, in 1984, referred to this as performance anxiety. Carrera is only reflecting everybody's latter-day anxiety about the role concerns that we can no longer respect, but that both laypersons and professionals alike have yet to work their way out of. There are also no rules or standards in sex unless you count the rule that there are no rules or standards. This is, in fact, the most oppressive of the rules. The rule of no rules is just the idea that sex should be spontaneous, that people should let it happen and stop interfering with it. Just as people think that no matter how hard they are working at sex, they're simply trying to trigger a spontaneous
Reaction pattern.
yeah, reaction pattern, so even sex therapists will offer rules that are not rules because they're designed only to liberate our spontaneous sexual selves. For example, Hartman and Fithian, a leading West Coast sex therapy team, offer the following no rule designed only to an eventuality that quote, often seriously inhibits lovemaking activities. Quote, the couples who function best are the ones who are always saying yes to the lovemaking activities in which they are involved. The implicit suggestion here, meaning the lesson to be learned from this observation, is that couples engage their partners and engage in those activities which they do enjoy, reaffirming by saying yes that they are enjoying the activity. We strongly encourage all our therapeutic couples to lead their partners into positive and pleasurable activities to which they, with complete abandon, can say yes because they are genuinely enjoying those particular activities. A negative response often seriously inhibits further lovemaking efforts and should be avoided whenever possible.
Yeah.
Hartman and Fithian precede this advice with a cautionary tale about a woman who interrupted sex with disastrous consequences. Quote, several years ago, while observing a research couple in coitus, the female in midst of coital activity said to her partner very loudly, "Stop!" Needless to say, the entire lovemaking activities halted. All the enjoyable feelings and the degree of arousal which had been present went, quote, down the drain. And then, in a somewhat embarrassing and uncomfortable situation, both partners attempted to continue with their lovemaking activities, never fully recovering the momentum well underway at stop. End quote. This sense of momentary...
that's why you have to be in tune with the other person and not just in tune with yourself, like masturbating and using the other person's body as a, whatever, masturbation tool or whatever. Because it's like, if someone's comfortable, they have to say stop. That's a red flag of like how in tune, like it's like it's like a reflection of how in tune that person really is.
Okay, but no, but Jared, like, I mean, it's all, he's gonna just go into it, but it's all right here. Like, this is all a house of cards of ideology, because it boils down to just be yourself. Unless yourself is bad, don't be that. Like, it's literally that. It's just be yourself. Unless it's bad, then don't be yourself. And like that, like, that's not helpful advice, right? Like, people hate that advice because it's not helpful.
Because it's like it's like they can't. Well, it's honest at least, because like no professional or actually no other person besides you can tell you who you really are and how you should behave or how you should spontaneously react.
Yeah.
Like, tell me how I should spontaneously react so I can do it right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's the thing. Sex is active activity, and like it's
supposed to be all spontaneous. You're supposed to say yes.
It's
anyway.
Supposed to, yeah. Okay. All right. This sense of momentum well underway strikingly conveys the vision of sex as an event about which there should be no rules except for rules that will ensure that it happens right. Although I do not pretend to be able adequately to solve this ontological conundrum, I can at least recognize that sex experts are, like Harvey's protagonist, struggling with reality. But unlike him, I think they are not so much overcoming it as being overcome by it. Hartman and Fithian's morality tale, Carrera's admonishments, and the Zussman's propositions all represent the familiar apocalyptic vision of sex that regularly appears in the women's pages. Men read the sports pages. The tone is consistently deploring. Sex therapists and sex educators accurately perceive sexual reality only to reject it. We are told in the most unflattering of terms that we do not take enough time for sex, that things do not that when we do take enough time for it, we do it too fast, and that when we take enough time for it and do it slowly enough, we treat it like an Olympic event. You can't win. This is to say that these are not observations of our sexuality that the experts are using to formulate a model of our sexual reality. Such observations cannot be developed further because their effect is to dismiss sexual reality. Carrera's comment expresses impatience with people for forgetting the nature of and purpose of sex. People are ruining sex. Hartman and Fithian show no interest in why the women they observed suddenly shouted, "Stop!" By irresponsibly injecting a personal note into what Hartman and Fithian like to call the love-making activity, she irreparably jarred it. This result being an object to take liberties with sex. Perhaps more than any other branch of sexology, the professional sex film movement best captures the way many of those in the field dismiss sexual reality in the name of sexual liberation. The guiding principle is that people have been taught to say no to sex. This makes them sex negative. They must be taught to say yes to sex, to be sex positive. They must be taught that sex is not dirty. Again, the sexologists are only purveying the general consensus. Popular wisdom now has it that sex is not dirty. This proposition is always presented as a counter-dogma, and professional sex films are unabashedly propagandistic. Booklets accompanying films by a major sex film producer are titled the Yes Books, Multimedia Resource Center, 1972. This article is old. The actors in these films are unfailingly nice, and the tone is upbeat and cheerful. Well, we've kind of evolved from this a little bit, but it's good to, hear where porn was at in high modernism. With the goals of permission and desensitization, the image of sex presented in these films is one of a hearty good fellowship, an image far removed from the threat of civilization that Freud envisioned. Whatever you want to do is okay, the only exception being that you should not impose your demands on your partner and should not allow your partner to impose his or her demands on you. As I put it elsewhere, the sexual reality found in professional sex films is a far cry from the sexual reality we all know. What it actually represents is a denial of sexual reality. The people in the professional sex films rarely have sex problems, and those they do have are easily solved. They always know what they want, and they always ask for it with a smile. They are understanding and patient and never want more than their fair share. In short, they always say yes. This is not presented as an ideal. It is presented as the way sex is, or would be if people would allow it. There is no evidence of any thought being given to why sex may be considered dirty. The idea is that our guilt about sex and our sexual inhibitions are a historical accident, a vestige of our Puritan and Victorian heritage that has no basis in reality. The thinking here is slipshod to the point of capriciousness.
Wait, hold on a second. You're talking about like the church brainwashing people so fucking badly that
into thinking sex is bad.
The whole sex is bad thing to them is like the idea of like your body is God's temple, it's not your body, and everything that you do is ugly and dirty to God, basically. So it's like That's like, dude, that's so fucked up. But yeah, like it's this relationship with your body that's like owing it to a master, which is an invisible master, whatever. Like I give my body to an invisible master, and that he's watching everything I do with it all the time, you know, kind of like perspective, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that kind of relationship with, like that's so disconnected from the God within you.
Okay, yeah. Well, he's describing porn films where everything seems extremely ideal and consensual, and like the idea there is that what it's representing is like, if people were to enact that, they would be basically slaves to this form of behavior. You know what I mean? Like
it's just like any other meme.
Yeah.
Like when somebody sees something on Friends and then just repeats it without even thinking about it or some shit.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same thing, but in sex it's way more embarrassing, right?
Yeah. And so the idea is that like like the church, or you could say like, I don't know, religion and like,
are you a regurgitator or are you a creator of your own behavior, basically? Like do you like do you do things because you have a will behind it? Like you're doing it because you want to do it, and you're doing it,
or like
they're doing it the way that you think it should be done. You think it should be done. Versus trying to do it in imitation of something you saw, and there's no will to do it the way you want to do it.
Right. So yeah, as Zizek said, it was like we used to live in a paternalistic society that what's it called, that let me think, okay, so we used to live in a paternalistic, restrictive, like, society, and that where you were admonished for enjoying things, right? Now we live in
what do you mean by admonished?
Chastised, punished.
Oh, okay. For what?
Enjoying things.
Oh, I see.
Whereas now we live in a maternalistic, permissive society where you are compelled to enjoy things. You're admonished for not enjoying things.
Yeah, you're chastised for
not enjoying things.
Yeah, well, for abstaining.
Yes, for abstaining from enjoying things. Yeah, and so, so it's like we're in a.
Well, yeah. What a reversal of culture.
Yeah. You're compelled to enjoy. Like, you have to enjoy. Okay.
If you're not enjoying it to the fullest, you're not living up to the expectation of what it could be. And therefore,
come on, man.
And therefore, you're disappointing the woman.
Yeah. What the fuck, man? Come on.
Like, hey, you're not enjoying this enough. And you're not I don't see you imitating enjoyment convincingly enough.
Yeah.
I don't. It's like an actor saying to another actor, "I don't believe you." You know what I mean?
Oh my god. Yeah.
Like, come on, we're acting.
Yeah.
Make me believe you.
How many people are involved in sex? Is it 2 people or is it 4 people? Like,
no, it's
the 2 people having sex plus
there's
the
audience.
The audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Audience, yeah.
There's the invisible audience.
Yeah. Okay. The thinking here is slipshod to the point of capriciousness. Sex guilt and sexual inhibitions are worldwide. The sexual restrictions found in China, India, and Russia can hardly be traced to the Puritans and Victorians. Even the Church Fathers did not originate sex guilt. Indeed, Augustine, in his City of God, argued that he saw evidence of sexual shame all around him. He at least did not dismiss sexual reality, even if he took it too much at face value. And that it was this rather than some purely supernal vision that led him to conclude that sex is inherently shameful.
Is it inherently shameful just because of maybe
he's disagreeing.
Hold on. Because of like racial memory of the Puritan era, and like it's like built into our superego to remember.
No, but the person who made this observation that it was Augustine, who lived in the late Roman Empire, like 300, I think 400 AD.
Yeah.
Okay, so like this is before Puritans. This is like Roman society. Even then, sex was something that was like, like people were ashamed of it. People were ashamed of being caught having sex. People being caught having affairs or.
What about this idea? Because what I'm saying is that was it only considered shameful because of the culture to consider it sinful, or was it?
That's what I'm saying.
Or was it considered shameful because like privacy really exists and like that's a private thing that when other people are witness, it like it's like it lets in the idea of the audience, which there shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right. There shouldn't be an audience in that interaction.
Yeah, which is what Augustine concluded when he says that sex is inherently shameful, because what is shame? It's the need to cover. It's the need to cover yourself.
It's shameful to an audience.
Yeah, exactly. It's shameful in the sense you hide it. It's like.
Well, yeah, but it's shameful if there was an audience.
Just like, yeah. So it's like.
If there wasn't, then it shouldn't be. It's inherently shameful to an audience. That's what it should. That's what. How it should be
Okay. I see what you mean. Okay.
It's not just inherently shameful in like because when if you're having like comfortable, authentic sex, and you're not thinking about any kind of audience that would see it, it's just between you and the other person.
Yeah.
Then it's not inherently shameful.
Right. Yeah. But
because there's privacy.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Privacy is a real thing.
No one has yet offered a way to reasonably comprehend the idea that sex is dirty. It seems to me that the best way to comprehend it is to think of it as a reaction to the exploitative side of sex, a not inconsiderable side of sexual reality. In this light, the counter-dogma that sex is okay, not dirty, represents a laundering of sexual reality.
What do you mean by laundering?
Like washing. Like a washing, scrubbing, whitewashing.
Okay, gotcha.
The dirty side of sex is disposed of rather ingenuously in the codicil to the proposition that sex is okay. Recall that it is okay as long as you do not impose your demands on your partner and do not allow your partner to impose his or her demands on you. That is, as long as it is not exploitative. Implicit in this guideline is the assumption that sexual exploitation and the imposition of sexual demands is obvious, conscious, and avoidable, rather than difficult to detect and universal. In other words, sex is clean as long as it is not dirty.
Wait, hold on. Let me read that part again.
He's making a really good point here.
The imposition of sexual demands is obvious, conscious, and avoidable, rather than difficult to detect. Oh, well, why did you say and universal though?
Okay, implicit in this guideline is the assumption that sexual exploitation and imposition.
So we're talking about exploitation, which is at the expense of the other person. Like it's a situation. In which,
he defined it right here.
Hold on a second. It's a situation in which the other person isn't able to properly make the definitive decision. For instance, right, underage people.
That's a little bit too narrow of a definition. I think this is what he's talking about, which would include that. It's as long as you do not impose your demands. Impose your demands.
No, but we're talking
what does impose mean?
Well, yeah, but consensuality is not does not necessarily mean that there isn't sexual exploitation. So the key point is whether there's sexual exploitation or not whether or not there was an imposing of demands on the other person, because
that's how he's defining exploitation, as the imposition of a demand when you know what I mean, like if you impose something, that means that it was against the will of somebody else, right? Like it's if it was not against their will, you wouldn't describe that action as imposing.
But what if somebody isn't able to even comprehend whether or not they want something?
That would be an imposition.
So it would be imposing something where somebody isn't ready to receive.
Of course, yeah.
So it would be exploitative because
Yeah.
it's imposing your demands on somebody who is even as unable to consent.
Yes.
It was unable to decide to even know whether or not they want to consent or not.
Right. Okay, so, but then he goes on to say, implicit in this guideline to not exploit or let yourself be exploited, okay? Implicit in this guideline is the assumption that sexual exploitation and imposition of sexual demands is obvious, conscious, and avoidable, rather than difficult to detect and universal.
What does it mean by that way universal?
Like
Difficult to detect, like it's
you know-
supposed to be vague.
No, okay, he's saying that he's making the argument that there are forms of exploitation that are difficult to detect and universal. Does that make sense? That every sexual encounter is marred by some kind of like difficult to detect and universal, imposition or like exploitation on both partners or one or both, that sex always has this naturally that in its natural state it has a sort of like exploitation about it that you can't avoid.
You're saying it's inherently always exploitative?
There's a difficult to detect and universal exploitation that's involved in
No, but he's saying there's two different perspectives of it. It's either that the imposition of sexual demands is obvious, conscious, and avoidable, meaning it's not difficult to detect and universally universally difficult to detect. It's not universally difficult to detect. It's universally obvious, conscious, and avoidable to detect. It's saying it's not the other thing. It's not the latter. It's the former.
You're right. But what he's saying is that this is the statement that he's talking about. Sex is okay. In that sentiment is the idea that in that sentiment is the idea that in the idea that sex is okay is the idea that it's not problematic, that there's nothing about it that is difficult or like just perniciously common, in it, that's difficult. Like it's naturally easy, but for some reason everyone gets it wrong, like that's what they're saying is that. So
no, but they're talking specifically about exploitation and posing sexual demands.
Saying sex is okay. Saying sex is okay.
Saying the imposition of sexual demands
sex is okay.
obvious.
Saying sex is okay is to say that all those forms of exploitation are self-evidently obvious, and that makes it abundantly easy to avoid to anybody with half a brain, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so which is
not difficult to detect, right?
Yeah, which happens to not be the case. Although this proposition is nonsense on the face of it, it represents a real position. It represents a flat-out dismissal of sexual reality. It means treating rape, harassment, and other forms of sexual exploitation as distortions of sex rather than as part of what sex really is. This really
that's pretty fucked up.
All right, just stay with the argument. You don't have to agree with it, okay? Just stay with it.
Okay.
This means blaming the victim, especially in the case of the institutionalized soft rape that is universally part of marital contracts. Now, this is an older article.
They're basically saying that rape is a part of a relationship. They're part of any relationship.
No.
Right? It's like that's a part of like if you're in a sexual relationship with someone, it involves rape and harassment, and that's a part of it.
Let me just finish this, and we can try to figure out what he means by that. This means that thus a woman in the past was duty, even if it meant even if the most it could mean to her was thinking of England, sex was a dirty duty, literally a favor women did for men. Now that sex is thought of as not dirty, this woman is expected to enjoy what is still a duty, and if she does not, she is found wanting by herself as well as by others. She has no right to complain then, and she has no right to complain now. In the moral perspective of the pre-modern era, the unpatriotic Englishwoman, or the one who recognized this exhortation misrepresented the object of her charity, was considered simply to be mean-spirited. We think she is afraid of sex, that she is afraid of closeness or of letting go. What gives this conception so much plausibility is the fact that it is descriptively correct. My contention is that such a woman, to continue with our example, is not literally afraid of sex, however convincingly this may appear to be the case. She is afraid of being inadequate. This is easy to miss because both laypersons and professionals ignore the way that sex is a test of adequacy. This underlying fear of inadequacy is also easy to miss because there are, of course, always reasons...
Wait, hold on, wait. What kind of point are they making about, what was it that... It seems like you brushed past, like...
Yeah, about how it means treating rape, harassment, and other forms of sexual exploitations as distortions of sex rather than part of what sex really is. So then he goes on to say, sex is actually a form of, or is actually a test of adequacy, right? So when it comes to rape, harassment, sexual exploitation, these are all forms of failing the test, either on the part of the abuser or on the part of the victim. And like, because what sex is a test that, like,
it's a, okay, you're saying that rape and harassment are results.
They're
are results from
the test
failing the test of adequacy.
Yeah.
They're
because you're not adequate if you rape someone.
You're
not adequate.
But is the test of adequacy the sexual reality, or is that not?
That's the thing, is that he's saying that we have this mental tick, this unconscious, invisible mental tendency to take the ideal outcome and say that that's all it is, and that the failure outcomes, that those are actually distortions that have nothing to do with sex, and that that sex is only when you pass the test. And it's like no, actually sex is the whole thing. It's the whole thing. It's like, you know, if you say that rape is sex,
because they failed the imaginary test of adequacy and then took their anger or aggressions out on the other person, and then the person let it happen to them so that they could recreate the trauma they experienced, and you know what I mean, and all that shit.
Yeah, the fact that we can judge any case of sexual misconduct and be like decide for ourselves whether or not somebody did something wrong, that proves that sex is a test of adequacy.
But wait a second.
Because everybody is a judge.
Rape and harassment, though, aren't necessarily always the result of failing at the test of adequacy.
What I mean
because there are some fucked up people out there that don't give a fuck about the test of adequacy.
This is what I'm saying, Jared. We call it rape and harassment because these are heavily loaded, valued terms, because we are saying you are failing.
What I meant to say is there's some fucked up people out there who don't rape and harass people because of that. They rape and harass people just because they're psychopaths, and they're just trying to get what they want, not because of a damaged bruised ego from failing a test, but simply just because they're recreating trauma that happened to them, and they're getting a chemical addiction with no empathy for others. So that's not the same thing as being bruised and damaged of a person and raping people as a result of you know what I mean, like a pent up aggression, and trying to get back at like whatever perceived enemy, women or men or whatever, whoever it is, because of a failure in adequacy. What I'm saying is that all I'm saying is that yes, rape and harassment are a part of
Like rape is a failure.
are a part of the failures of sex.
Rape is
but
those
aren't necessarily the only example of rape and harassment.
Right, but yeah, what I'm saying is rape is a failure in the sense that it's a failure to obtain consent, and then the moral failure to continue with the sex act without having obtained consent. And we see that as a moral failure. We see that as failure of the person who's raping, right? Like they're like, and also like
They're failing at sex.
Yeah, exactly. They're getting
You're doing it wrong.
They're getting an F at sex because they're not. Yeah.
That's not how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, because of what happens to them.
Basically,
too.
the way we see sex is that any sex encounter can be graded. Every person in that sexual encounter can be given a grade, either like, A, F, or maybe neutral, like no grade because they weren't involved, but like they were there or something like that. Like, if somebody was raped, it's not like they get an F, right? You only get an F if you rape, or if you
recreate that again.
Yeah, if you somehow create the conditions for yourself to be raped over and over again or something like that. That would be the other side.
You're failing at sex in that regard.
Yeah.
Because you're not exercising self-ownership principle, which is vital to
right.
a healthy sexual relationship.
Right. So yeah, we all think of sex as something that is to be graded, and that's he's not exactly saying that's good or bad. He's just pointing out that people don't want to admit that. People don't want to admit that. People want to say it's not something that's to be graded. It's something to be enjoyed, and it's beautiful, and it's it's,
they're ignoring.
Yeah.
They're ignoring. So wait, is the sexual reality then that this exists? Is that what he's talking about, or
yes.
is he saying, which is what I thought the original point was, is that there's a sexual reality of what sex is beyond just this?
Yes, it's both because he demonstrates how our understanding of sex evolves.
Because this idea of failing at sex in so many ways, those are false versions of sex, not a part of what sex is.
No, those are okay. If sex is a test, then those are failures.
Isn't successful? Well, look at
those are
I'm
outcomes.
coming back to the same example, the same thing that people mistakenly believe, but then also just reaffirming the argument because it's an argument to itself. Like the idea that that successful sex is the only thing that's considered to be
right.
actual sex.
Yeah.
Anything else isn't actually sex.
Yeah.
See, it's like this idea that is the failure of sex, which is rape, part of sex, as part of the sexual reality, or is it that it's a different thing altogether that shouldn't be considered as the same thing?
Well, it
because
doesn't
it's
make
obviously
sense to
because
do
it's
that.
because sex is a consensual thing.
The thing is,
And I wouldn't consider rape to be sex.
No, because I'm sorry, if there's, how do you define rape? How do you define rape if there's no sex that's occurring?
I mean, it's unconsensual and it's not sex.
Exactly. So sex is different than consensual sex.
But look, that's like saying you're using the same word.
Intercourse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
sex is different than intercourse. Okay, so sex is
only
only
you're using
sex
the
is
word sex as
so okay. So you're saying you're saying sex. You're saying sex is consensual intercourse.
Well, isn't it?
Okay. No, it's not. It's not always consensual intercourse. Like, I think that like rape counts as sex in the sense that it's like a form of sex that we would consider a failure of sex, like a failed outcome of sex or something.
So it's an abomination of sex, but it's like
that's the thing is that
it's an abnormality.
We have to.
It's an abnormality.
No,
is what I meant to say.
No, that's the thing is that you have to like. We have to change our mental categories
Okay, wait, hold on a second. I want to make the point of, look, there's this idea, there's two different perspectives here that I was going to get into in a later show, but I just want to bring this up just briefly. But there's two different perspectives here that I just want you to consider, okay? One is that there's no such, like, everything is right unless it's wrong, right? Everything that you do is always right unless it's violating something, in which case it's wrong. But if it's not violating anything, then it's still technically
binary.
Then it's still technically right.
Binary morality. Yeah.
But then there's this idea. But no. Here's another form of binary morality, and it might just be that both of these are true. That also that there's one right way, and everything else is technically not the right way. This idea that, you know how, like, there's always a better way to do anything.
Right. So there's.
So if there's always a better way to do something because it works better, then there is a such thing as perfection. There's a such thing as, like, the perfect way.
Or perhaps perfectibility is like an unattainable ideal.
No, but what I'm saying is it exists because of the fact that there's always a better way to do it.
Right.
The fact that there's always a better way means that there's this thing called perfection that exists that we can only try to get close to. But that's why progress is made in the first place.
Yeah.
Because there's this idea of a perfectly right way where there's no there's no consequences or negative repercussions, or no pain, basically, when there's no pain or resistance.
I'm never gonna finish this fucking article.
No, yes you will.
All right, let me try to get.
So what I'm saying is that from this perspective, wouldn't there, like, your definition of certain things, like to walk, if somebody stumbles, would you even consider it a walk? They're, like, stumbling around and they're not even, like, really even supporting themselves.
We call that a form of walking.
They're still considered walking.
When you look in the dictionary for synonyms of walking, it's because you're looking for all the different variations of walking, which include successful and unsuccessful forms of walking, right? Like.
But there's only one way to actually walk.
No, there's
right?
not.
I mean, no, there's a way to walk like...
There's a way that humans walk, but even then, there's a way that Europeans walk, and there's a way that fucking Chinese people walk.
Okay, yeah, I'm not talking about, like, the different... But all those people are walking a right way. Like, just because... Like, I'm not talking about different gaits. I'm talking about, like, there's a way to walk so that you don't fall. So,
I see what you mean. The mechanism of walking upright on 2 feet. Okay.
So that you don't fall, exactly. And if you don't do it that way, you're not actually walking, are you? You're either, like, stumbling and falling, or you're, like, you know, it's like if you're describing what someone's doing.
Right. So yeah, you're saying there's the neutral version of it. Which, yeah, I guess I agree with that.
Like, so that's why people think that when they talk about sex, they're talking about it purely in the sense of the way that it works and is not a failure. You know what I mean? The way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
The way that it works and doesn't cause.
Yeah. However,
the way that you can walk upright without falling.
Yeah. However, the way that people like to talk about it is as if there's no way to fall because, like, you know, bad people don't fall. Like, you know, and I'm not a bad person, and you aren't either, are you?
Yeah, it's a very interesting article. Anyway, continue.
Okay.
Sorry to, like.
No worries. My contention is that such a woman, to continue with our example, is not literally afraid of sex, however convincingly this may appear to be the case. She is afraid of being inadequate. This is easy to miss because both laypersons and professionals ignore the way that sex is a test of adequacy. This underlying fear of inadequacy is also easy to miss because there are, of course, always reasons why such a woman is unable or unwilling to fulfill the required role it demands. She may have been raised she may have been raised as a strict Catholic. She may have suffered incest, or she may be turned off by her husband. It never is difficult to find such influences, and such a woman and any therapist she goes to is quite likely to believe that these influences are the cause of her problem rather than that they prevent her from being automatically responsive and hence create feelings of inadequacy by making it hard for her to enact her role. You see the difference there? Oh, these problems are getting in the way of you enjoying sex versus these problems are getting in the way of you being automatically responsive
and
Yeah, if you're genuinely responsive, your test of adequacy is not even a test anymore because you just succeed.
Yeah.
It's not like you're walking the line between success and fail if you're just simply responsive.
Exactly. Well, okay, wait, yeah. So, yeah, rather than that they prevent her from being automatically responsive and hence create feelings of inadequacy by making it hard for her to enact her role. Thus, this woman and her therapist can be expected to believe, 1, that there is no good reason for sexual antipathies, 2, that there is no good reason to experience sex as a test of adequacy, even though 3, they both take it for granted that one's capacity and willingness to fulfill one's sex role is in actuality an ultimate test of one's adequacy, maturity. They both think that she should not experience sex as a test, and this is the new test. Feeling tested may be the most spontaneous of sexual responses, even if it does not fit our fantasy of sexual spontaneity.
Yeah, no, we can't get beyond the fact, Sam, that sex is a test of adequacy. Yeah, you're right. It is a sexual reality. It's not something that we can escape. It's not this imaginary thing because it's a test of a performance to your partner. Because your partner's going to judge you based on a certain criteria. Yeah. Even if that criteria is based on bullshit, it's still criteria nonetheless, and you are being tested based on it.
Yeah, and we're a lot better when we.
So the invisible audience is really the past memes of both people who are judging each other based on those past memes.
Like the rules of sexual conduct, but also the rules of intimacy. That's what sex. It's like the rules of intimacy.
The judgment of performance, and that's a judgment of imitation.
Yeah.
I mean, judgment of performance being not necessarily a judgment of imitation, but it's like whether or not they're gonna make their decision of whether or not they're gonna be with you based on how well you perform. Whether or not it's imitation or genuine, it is a test of if the person likes the way you have sex, especially if it's the first time you ever had sex. It's like first impressions kind of thing. The first impression is always a test.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So since performing in a sex always means saying yes, proposed, it should be clear that the yes books and the yes films must intensify the pressure to perform, just as sex educators and sex therapists decry the concerns with sexual performance, while giving rules about how to perform better. Professional sex films are in effect training films for the new sex roles. I single out sexologists not only because they are in the best position to observe sexual reality, but also because more than anyone else they are expected to be able to look at sexual reality without being put off by it. However, I also have been suggesting that everyone dismisses sexual reality. Sex is communication. The best example of how we dismiss sexuality is our new, barely a century old, idea that sex is the best form of communication. Recall that the Zussmans called it the most intense form, which presumably means the same thing. Now, what is the reality being dismissed here? Everyone is well aware of the fact that sex talk is all encouragement and flattery, as I noted above. Outside of that, people can't talk in sex. For example, sex as we know it usually happens in bed just before we go to sleep with the man on top. As likely as not, the woman's head gets pushed up against the headboard or the wall, but she dares not say anything about this because it might interrupt sex, the best form of communication. With regard to my earlier parallel with infield chatter, it would be as if the ball player were to shout to his teammates that it was getting awfully hot in the outfield. Now, some may object on the ground that sexual communication is non-verbal, and so this woman would not be expected to say anything. She would communicate her discomfort with body language. So she squirms uncomfortably, and her partner, perceiving her as writhing with pleasure, gives a few extra shoves. In fact, in the best representation of sexual reality available in the professional literature, Masters and Johnson's, reporting on their observations of volunteer couples in the laboratory, found that discomfort was ritualistically concealed. Their sample was composed of 307 committed heterosexual couples. chosen for their freedom from sexual difficulties, the women were often made uncomfortable by the rather abrupt and vigorous way that their partners fondled their breast, especially during their menstrual periods. Although the women admitted their discomfort to Masters and Johnson, on only 3 occasions out of thousands of observations did a woman ask her husband to be more gentle, and no woman ever asked her husband to stop. The same problem arose over early and deep digital penetration of the vagina by the husbands, as well as overly vigorous clitoral manipulation. The husbands were, if anything else, even less likely than their wives to communicate dissatisfaction. The most frequent complaint made to Masters and Johnson by the husband was that their wives did not grasp the shaft of the penis tightly enough. Damn, that sucks. Not one of the men had ever mentioned this to his wife, either during the period of observation or at any other time. The level of communication is perhaps best conveyed by the report, and although it invariably was the man who decided when to penetrate, all the men were under the impression that it was in some sense a mutual decision, since, as the investigators learned from interviewing them, they only went ahead when she was wet. In this discussion of this finding, Masters and Johnson point out that lubrication signifies only the capacity for penetration, not the desire. So, wet-ass pussy, not always not always an invitation, despite what Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi B will tell you, want you to believe. Although the husbands were conspicuously unable accurately to perceive their wives' states of mind, what was most revealing was the husband's belief that their perceptions were accurate despite the obvious ambiguity they were faced with. They asked no questions, yet they were constantly oblivious of their wife's discomfort, even though the woman's pained grimaces were plainly visible to the observers. The men assumed their wives were enjoying it, and few of the women punctured this illusion. When the men were interviewed afterwards, they expressed surprise to learn of their wives' discomfort, and the unanimous reaction was, "Why didn't she tell me?" The answer to this should have been, "She didn't tell you because sex is the best form of communication." Needless to say, the question of "why didn't she tell me" was asked with some asperity rather than genuine curiosity. The men acted as if they had never heard that sex is communication. They were no more interested in discovering what the women were actually experiencing than Hartman and Fithian were interested in discovering why the woman they were observing shouted "stop." The show must go on. The men just wanted to know how to make the women satisfyingly responsive. This is the sexist duty paradigm. The idea is that women owe them the response they need. It is not a matter of simple suzerainty.
Suzerainty?
Suzerainty?
Yes, do it like a pronunciation.
Oh.
Pronunciate, yeah.
Suzerainty.
There's here, go down, scroll down. Should be like a little like play button where you can like, oh, what the fuck?
Suzerainty.
Oh, isn't there like a little audio thing, like signal something you can play? How to say suzerainty is right there.
It's a bullshit idea.
The dominant entity in the suzerains of a tributary vassal state. powerful region or people controls. Suzerainty is a situation in which a powerful region or people
Suzerainty.
Yeah, never heard of that before, but I guess I've heard of a suzerain. Okay. It is not a matter of simple suzerainty, since the men feel bound to meet the women's needs, as I have already noted. Perhaps what has happened is that the new mutuality is still understood from within the old paradigm, meaning that sex is now organized as a ritual of mutual possession. It may seem that these findings and impressions concerning heterosexuality are not applicable to homosexuality, and especially not to the paraphilias, perversions, in which there is no partner. To adequately treat this potential objection, I should first point out that these forms of sexuality have typically been treated as irrelevant to any consideration of what sex is. They are treated as inconsequential aberrations, or worse, partly because they do not fit the procreational model, but primarily because they are threatening departures from the roles everyone relies on. To pick at random, the pre-Columbian Peruvians dragged homosexuals through the streets, and at the end of the rope, hanged and burned them. The Aztecs disemboweled them. Krafft Ebing, in his influential Psychopathia Sexualis, 1886, only mirrored everyone's Gothic imaginations about degenerates. The perversions were the breakdown products of neural moral degeneration. In this view, it was quite remarkable for Freud to look at Psychopathia Sexualis and, rather than being repelled by it, to even be able to see himself in Krafft Ebing's gallery of grotesques, the result being his conception that each of the paraphilias represent a component of normal sexuality rather than a perverse or distorted form of normal sexuality. Freud postulated that these components then work together in most of us to create an ensemble that represents a balancing off of all the component impulses. Thus, we can learn about the components of our own sexuality from these specialists.
Wait, he's saying that that homosexuality is a natural part of sex too.
He's saying that what Freud thought was Freud thought that every perversion was
that perversions and degenerates are normal.
No, rather that they're like. Okay, wait. I think he's gonna explain it. What can we learn? Freud thought that we could learn about components of the sexual instinct. Okay, he's saying that the different perversions and philias represents different components of the primal base sexual instinct that exists in everybody, basically. So yeah, that's what he thought.
But that's weird. So you're saying that there's a sexual instinct.
I'm not saying
to view another person's sexuality and then be attracted
yeah. He's
you're saying that everybody inside them has an impulse to fuck everybody.
No, I'm not saying that. Freud was saying that. Freud was saying that basically he could be turned on by every type of sexual perversion, which is says something about Freud, you know.
Is it something to be said about Freud, or is it in Freud's mind, or I mean, as Freud would have you believe, is it in fact the
something
truth,
to say about everything,
the truth
everyone?
That's something to be said about everyone.
Right.
That's my question.
Well, let's read on. What can we learn? Freud thought we could learn about the components of sexual instinct, but in Freud's time, the search was for biological causes, a reaction to the reckless purposivism of the earlier nature philosophy, a vitalistic, mystical movement in which both organismic and cosmic events were seen as governed by supra-organic influences. In these more innocent times, biology appeared to offer a safe refuge from such irresponsible speculation. However, we need not be dependent on Freud's answer to use his insight that the paraphilias offer clues to the components of everyone's sexuality. They can be understood as ways both to meet sexual role pressures to perform, as well as to escape these pressures. Thus, in S&M or B&D sex, the roles are clearly set out in advance, as is the whole scenario, a scenario that escapes the requirement to be mutually affirmative. The compulsion to act appreciative is entirely disposed of. Although other of the paraphilias appear to lack an object, they can be seen as versions.
What are paraphilias? Those like the
fetishes.
The fetishes? Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Lack an object.
They can be seen as versions of.
Sex as possession. Exhibitionists, voyeurs, and fetishists are all men, as are almost all child molesters, and their sex pattern is essentially an exaggeration of this essential component of male sexuality. It is as if they possess what they can. I see.
They possess what they can. Yeah, it's male sexuality because it's testosterone, which is
sex as possession.
But which is masculinity, and like we talked about, there's a such thing as the failure of masculinity, right? Which is masculinity not balanced with non-aggression. Without femininity, it becomes the masculine becomes the violent abuser and taker of other people's. So, and of course that also means sexual domination and possess what they can, like we're talking about, possess what they can. Like it's like the predatorial, philias, that are paraphilias. The predatorial paraphilias.
Yeah.
It would make sense that they're masculine.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure if this is true that all exhibitionists, voyeurs,
Well, of course, no,
and
but
fetishists are men. Obviously,
because women have a sacred masculine as
Yeah.
well, and they can have
But the
imbalanced,
point he's making, I think that holds up.
testosterone levels as well.
Is that it's generally more men than women because of the testosterone.
Dude, you could argue
factor,
that testosterone is, in fact, like you can't separate that it is the self-ownership principle in men. Like how much testosterone you have, it's like a chemical that your brain releases as a result of how much like self-defense you're exercising or self-ownership you're using.
All right, let's go on. Similarly, this element of male sexuality is exaggerated in homosexual men. Here I refer to cruising, to the bath and toilet scene with its glory holes, and to contacts with large numbers of partners. In a 1982 study of AIDS victims, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta found that the median number of sexual partners these men had in their lifetimes was 1,100. A few of the men reported as many as 20,000. Similarly, lesbians typically engage in romantic and tender sex. When compared with gay men, the contrast exaggerates that found between straight men and women. Thus, it is possible to lay some claim to generality for the proposition of mutual possession or who are refugees from it.
Yeah.
You're
either the victim or the abuser.
Well, in the case of this lesbian romantic and tender sex, it's two victims who are escaping that dynamic and having.
No, but there's always a beta.
Exactly.
I mean, there's always an alpha too. You're saying.
Yeah, you're
saying.
what you're
So it's
yeah.
like- so
What
it's
you're
like
saying is
two-
you can never exactly escape that form of possession. Sex as possession. Sex as.
Well, you don't escape possession just by changing the gender of your partner.
Yeah, exactly. But, that's the fantasy that's the. Yeah. So yeah, that's the fantasy they're playing out, like in the ritual. But the way the new paradigm has been understood in terms of the old is best captured by Hartman and Fithian's recommendations above regarding proper sexual conduct. Had they been writing in the pre-modern era, they would have not been at all hesitant about offering rules of conduct. There was no other approach. All problems in relationships were solved by proposing rules of conduct, and the experts never tired of telling us how to behave. Hartman and Fithian would simply have said that a lady just does not express unseemly sentiments during sex, since this can be highly vexatious for a gentleman concerned. No one would have wondered what feelings she had to suppress and at what cost. Self-actualization, authenticity, and mutuality, in whatever rudimentary forms they existed, were taken simply as self-indulgences that one should have the strength of character to restrain. But nowadays, things are not so easy for arbiters of sexual conduct. Now we worry, in a word, that the lady will be uptight. So Hartman and Fithian recommend accentuating the positive, always saying yes. This is the heading under which their cautionary tale is presented, but only by saying yes to activities which they, sexual partners, do enjoy, and to which they, with complete abandon, can say yes to, because they are genuinely enjoying those activities. In other words, sex is communication, but only if what you want to communicate is unconditional acceptance. Hartman and Fithian risk redundancy. Complete abandon implies genuine enjoyment. To make it clear, they do not intend to offer rules of conduct. They want people to follow the recommendations spontaneously. In other words, what this ontological struggle represents is the new paradigm caught in the death grip of the old. We are being admonished for treating sex as a test of adequacy, thereby instituting a new criterion of sexual adequacy, the ability to treat sex as if, in Zussman's words, there are no rules or standards, and in Carrera's words, to follow our own inclinations rather than to measure ourselves against others' outside standards. And it is to be hoped Hartman and Fithian's women who shouted stop will in the future follow the rules with complete abandon. What we're being accused of is inadequacy in meeting the new performance criteria. If this were not so, the experts wouldn't be dismissing reality. They would be interested in it. They would be thinking less about momentum and more about what those who would interrupt sex need to say.
Yeah. It's something we're ignoring and thus suffering as a result of.
Yeah. This is to say that they would be less dominated by the biological mystique with its assumptions of fixed patterns and roles, a conception that much better fit a time when all patterns and roles were divinely inspired. Thus, in their present mode, sex therapists and sex educators do not more than purvey the popular consciousness.
Consensus.
Yeah, consensus.
You're getting tired.
Yeah, they preserve the paradox created by the possession consciousness on the one hand, and the insistence on mutuality that characterize contemporary verities. Ideally, sexologists will soon begin to entertain sexual reality rather than to dismiss it, with the exciting consequence that we might begin to approach the genuine mutuality made possible by our democratic institutions and to reclaim another bit of our natures from the Ausland. Yeah, basically he's saying hopefully we'll ask why, people
that could start a conversation that could shatter the illusions.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like once we understand what's being ignored about sex, one of the most personal things that everybody exploits, and that we seem to have all these wrong assumptions about because of the way that it's been presented to us in Hollywood and in porn, and the way that we judge each other based on meeting the expectations that are created by those things.
Right.
And it does create this adequacy test, which is the crude, ugly reality, but not the authentic nature, right? He's saying that it's the crude current reality, but not the authentic nature, right? Because there's an authentic nature that exists beyond just this. This ignored sexual reality that's like the sickness of the world that we're living.
And the truth is, people achieve it all the time. People have good sex all the time, but that sadly has to be a minority of the case, right?
Yeah, I've heard the amount of women that experience an orgasm is ridiculously low or whatever, because there's so much uncommunication and unconnection
Yeah.
and unresponsiveness
Like they're saying that.
to each other
Literally.
in like in couples or whatever.
Yeah, it's the agreeableness. It's the need to perform. It's the need to be adequate.
And thus
Yeah.
and thus all of the pain and suffering and
You have to
and-
wonder
and-
why they're
and-
fucking in the first place.
and abnormalities as the result of the shame of not meeting
Yeah.
the test
Yeah.
expectations.
You gotta wonder why these people are fucking matching on Tinder in the first place if they're just gonna fucking, like beat themselves up about it.
For not
For not
well, no.
enjoying
Well,
themselves.
what about this? What about the idea that's presented in 40-Year-Old Virgin, where he's like, you have to get good by fucking a whole bunch of hood rats, and then you'll be ready.
Hey.
Like you have to practice sex by going through the motions of, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You have to practice this. You have to practice sex until you meet the expectations of, porn and Hollywood, and then and only then will you be considered good at sex. Once you've practiced on a bunch of hood rats, and then you're able to perform the ritual in a way that's satisfactory to meeting the adequacy test based on the criteria of Hollywood movies and pornography.
That's the kind of advice you can only give or follow if you really enjoyed just doing that, because it's like, who's gonna go out and do that just so that one day they can have good sex? Nobody. Like, no, that's the thing. It's like it's not worth somebody's trouble. That's why there's so many people who don't bother with dating or sex anymore, is because the internal contradictions in the kind of scheme or like ideological structure.
Yeah, people don't even go fed up with the pattern of imitation and then shame from not meeting these this ridiculous criteria.
Yeah.
And it's
They're just deciding not to engage now.
They're just they've just decided not to engage because they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do.
They don't want to be Me Too.
They don't know what to they don't know what to do other than imitate Hollywood and pornography.
Yeah,
they have no idea.
Now everyone's afraid they're gonna get Me Too'd if they fucking say the wrong thing.
What do you mean?
Like canceled.
Oh well, yeah.
Because of sexual impropriety. They're like, what? I just wanted a boyfriend. Or like I just wanted a girlfriend. I didn't know that was
No, you raped her life.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
No, yeah. I'm not, I don't know. But like people are getting canceled for crazy things. Like people are getting canceled for running for office and also dating college students, but they're also in their 20s, so they could be a college student, but they're running for office. Like people are, because supposedly it's a power imbalance. It's like, what? You're not allowed to date people anymore if you're running for office? Like,
what are you talking about?
The sexual neurosis of the woke left. It's crazy.
Oh, okay.
It's crazy.
Okay, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I know how crazy it is. No, feminism is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
It makes women hate their own femininity. Therefore, they're the idea of even trying to be themselves is repulsive. So like all they have is imitation, because like being authentically feminine is like a sin. So since it's a sin to be authentic, to be authentically feminine, all they have is imitation, and thus they're inevitably going to either be a success at imitating things and then not feel satisfaction because it's not authentic, or fail at imitating things and feel shame and inadequacy. So it's like they're stuck in adequacy test world.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They're stuck in that world of viewing everything from
Did you want to play some
the
more
outside
tunes?
in. I wanted to just play one thing to end it out. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Ooh. Oh.
Quaaludes. Fuck.
Hey, the big man's back. www.thekidfrombrooklyn.com. You ever see them signs on the highway billboards years ago? I'd walk a mile for a camel. Or they used to have cigarette commercials. The guy used to say I'd walk a mile for a camel. Well, let me tell all you young people out there, the big man would walk 20 miles for a Quaalude. Let me tell you. That was the drug back there in the late 70s and 80s. Quaaludes. The good old Aurora 714, and they changed it to lemon. I tell you. I wish I had a couple of them fucking lemons now. That was the best fucking drug ever made. It was so fucking good. The government took them off the fucking market because they were putting the fucking drug dealers out of fucking business. Non-narcotic, non-addictive. Bring back the fucking Quaaludes. You can take all the fucking cocaine, marijuana, and all them fucking designer drugs they make today and stick them up your fucking ass. There's nothing like a fucking Quaalude. I tell you, they were the fucking best. Having sex on a Quaalude, you thought you died. What the happened? Let me tell you. And when you had an orgasm, you thought you were on a fucking moon. Bring back that fucking Quaalude. Anyway, think about it. This is the big man, the voice of the people. Aurora 714.
All right, everybody. That's been
Illest Radio.
Tune in. We might do it a weekly thing. We might do it every other weekly thing, but it's always going to be Wednesday night at 11 o'clock.
Wednesday night. Be back. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Later.